Public Works to confirm the findings of the studies. Notice of public meeting that was originally issued on February 4th this year inadvertently did not include the requested relief for lot depth of 29 meters in lieu of 30 meters for this public park block, as well as the lot depth
Two minutes, everyone, 2 minutes. Chairs. Good evening, everyone. Welcome and thank you for being here. Welcome to the City of Woodstock Public Planning Meeting. Tonight's meeting is an open public meeting as required by the Planning Act. Due to the change in meeting venue, this meeting will be live streamed to the County of Oxford YouTube channel, and a recording of the meeting will also be posted on the city's website following the meeting. An agenda of the meeting can be found on the Agendas, Meetings, and Minutes page of the city's website. This meeting is for information and discussion purposes only, and no decisions will be made this evening. Council will make a decision on these matters at the regular council meeting to be held this Thursday. If you wish to address council at that meeting, you must submit a delegation form to the city clerk no later than 12 p.m. tomorrow, Wednesday. A delegation form is available on the city's website, or stick around tonight and we may have some. If an application is denied, only the applicant or the minister may file an appeal with the Ontario Land Tribunal within 20 days of issuance of the notice of council's decision. Only specified persons, public bodies, registered owners of land which the plan may apply, the requester to amend the plan, and the minister may appeal the decision of the City of Woodstock to the Ontario Land Tribunal within 20 days of issuance of the notice of council's decision. Excluding the minister, any party wishing to make an appeal must make written or oral submissions to council on a public meeting. Please note that third parties, anyone who is not specified persons or public body, do not have the right to appeal a decision for an official plan amendment to the Ontario Land Tribunal. Please keep your comments to planning matters only, and I'd ask that you avoid repeating comments that have already been expressed. If you have not provided oral or written comments but wish to receive formal notice of Council's decision on the matter, please contact the Clerk's Department. The notice will provide further information on appealing the decision. The planner will be asked to present the planning report for each application. The applicant will then be provided an opportunity to make comments, followed by those wishing to speak in favor of the application, and then followed by those wishing to speak in opposition of the application. I'll call you forward. Prior to proceeding with the first application, does anyone wish to declare a pecuniary interest on any items on tonight's agenda? Seeing none? Let's jump into it. We do have 7 tonight, so we'll get things going. First up, item 2A, B24-93-8, application for consent, which is 2079993 Ontario, Inc. Mr. Gilbert, thank you.
Thank you. This consent application seeks to sever lands that are zoned for commercial purposes from lands that are zoned for residential purposes. The lot to be severed has an area of 2.33 hectares with frontage on Devonshire and Cardinal Drive. The lot to be retained has frontage on Dunkirk Ave and contains a semi-detached dwelling. The lands have inadvertently merged when the subdivision was draft approved. These lands containing the semi-detached dwelling were subject to an exemption to part law control application. That bylaw exempts you from the severance process essentially, but has a time period associated with that. In this case, the applicants transferred the lot after that bylaw expired. So as such, the lands are still considered to be legally merged. The consent application, as noted, will just separate the commercial lands from the residential lands. Staff have no concerns with the proposal and recommend approval and support subject to the above or the 4 noted conditions in the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions of the planner from City Council? Seeing none, thank you. Is the applicant here tonight and wish to speak to this? And when coming forward, I'd ask that you state your name and address for the record. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Andrea Sinclair. I'm with MHPC Planning, 540 Binghamton Center Drive in Kitchener, here as the applicant. Nothing further to add. I think the staff report was comprehensive. As Mr. Gilbert mentioned, this is more of a technical consent. It was always intended that the commercial block would be separately developed from the residential, but they've merged on title, so this allows for the commercial lot to be separately conveyed and developed in the future. Again, just here in support of the staff report and the conditions, and here to respond to any questions that council may have.
Thank you. Any questions of Ms. St. Clair, the applicant? Seeing none, thank you. So at this point, I will ask if anybody would like to come forward and speak in favor of this application. Seeing none, I'd ask if anybody would like to speak against this application. Okay, seeing none, moving along. Next up, we have OP 23-5-8. SB 23-03-8, ZN 8-23-07, application for official plan amendment, draft plan of subdivision, and zone change. Mr. Gilbert.
Thank you. These applications are for official plan amendment, zone change, and draft plan of subdivision. The official plan amendment would redesignate the lands from the current designation, which is community facility, to residential. Block 1 would be low-density residential. Block 2 would be medium density, and Block 3 would be high density, with Block 4 and Block 5 to be open space, reflecting the proposed park use in the stormwater management block. The proposed official plan amendment for the medium density block would allow for a maximum density of 75 units per hectare above the current 70 units per hectare maximum. And the apartment block, Block 3, would allow for a density of 151 units per hectare, where 150 units per hectare is the maximum density in high density residential areas. As noted, the subdivision itself has 5 blocks, including one street, Street A, which connects from Lakeview Drive to Oxford Road 59 or Van Sittert Avenue, with a right in and right out access at Street A and Van Sittert Avenue. The proposal would have 26 single detached dwellings units in the Block 1, abutting low-density development to the north and to the east. Stacked townhouse development in Block 2 with 2 7-story apartment buildings located in Block 3 closer to Oxford Road 59 or Van Sittert Avenue. The lands themselves are 9.62 acres in size and currently contain a 1-story office building, which is proposed to be demolished for the proposed development. In support of the applications, the applicant submitted a number of technical studies, including a planning justification report, functional servicing report, traffic impact study, archaeological assessment, a tree preservation report, shadowing study for the 2 apartment buildings, a parking study, a phase 1 and a phase 2 environmental site assessment, as well as a noise feasibility assessment to measure the compliance with noise guidelines resulting from Oxford Road 59. As well, the traffic impact study and the parking study were peer reviewed by Oxford County Public Works to confirm the findings of the studies. The notice of public meeting that was originally issued on February 4th of this year inadvertently did not include the requested relief for the lot depth of 29 meters in lieu of 30 meters for this public park block, as well as a reduced exterior side yard width of 3.5 meters for the townhouse blocks abutting Street A, and a rear yard depth of 4.5 meters, which is measured to Street A for the townhouse blocks. Staff are satisfied that despite it not being included in the notice, proper notice was still given, as the requested relief is really technical in nature, and all of the plates that were circulated and reports circulated on the public notice and provided to the public did include that relief. That relief will effectively facilitate what is proposed. The applicant did host, notice the complete application was originally provided to the public in surrounding residents in October of 2023, with a revised notice complete application in October of 2024, following some changes the applicant made following an open house that the applicant held in April of 2024 to solicit public input. The comments received are included as an attachment to the report, and there's many concerns expressed about the density of development, concerns about compatibility with surrounding neighborhood, and concerns about parking and traffic impacts and safety. Overall, with respect to the provincial planning statement, staff of the opinion that the proposal is consistent with that document, particularly sections 2.14 and 2.21, to facilitate housing options and choice required to meet current and future residents of the city, as well as speaking to the development and redevelopment of underutilized commercial institutional sites for residential uses. It's important to note that this site currently zoned community facility could be used for a public hospital, could be used for a long-term care facility, could be used for a number of other institutional uses that could have a density and a far greater impact than what's proposed. These applications, though, seek to only permit residential uses on the site. The traffic impact study was prepared by the applicant. The findings were peer-reviewed by an external peer review consultant who indicated that they were in agreement with the study and the recommendations and the methodology. Originally, the lands have two accesses from Lakeview Drive, located approximately here, if you can see my cursor, before the landscaped median island. And after the landscape media island, the applicant indicated that it was not preferable to use this most westerly entrance to facilitate the apartment block. A lot of discussion occurred with Oxford County Public Works about permitting a second access or a sole one access onto Oxford Road 59. The compromise that was arrived at was a right in, right out to ensure that there aren't queues for turning left down Oxford Road 59, and that vehicles looking to enter the subdivision from the north would not stop and wait to make a left-hand turn and stop traffic in that area. The TIS was revised to reflect this arrangement, and the findings confirmed that the impacts are minor and are acceptable. With respect to other studies that were conducted, the noise feasibility study found that there would be some dwellings that would be impacted by noise from Oxford Road 59 and recommended some standard conditions such as requiring the buildings to have air conditioning and acoustical or noise barrier for the dwellings located directly or near Oxford Road 59. These recommendations will be carried forward and implemented through conditions of draft approval and in the approved site plans and the subdivision agreement. With respect to the parking that's sought, the applicant's proposing to not include or not waive the requirement for visitor parking. Visitor parking is typically 1 per 10 space of the required parking. In support of the parking request, they did submit a parking demand study, which was done for the townhouse and apartment dwelling blocks. The study concluded that the proposed parking being provided was sufficient to meet the expected parking demand from the proposed units, as predicted by the Institute of Transportation Engineers. It's also noted that the parking that's sought is generally in line with other approved parking reductions that the city's granted recently for high-density development in other locations throughout the city. Staff are of the opinion the proposal is consistent with the official plan criteria for infill subdivisions, as the design will provide a buffering or mitigate the impact of the higher density to existing neighborhood uses. There's 26 semi-detached dwelling units that will back onto the existing low-density development, as well as the storm pond. These units will provide a buffer, a transition to medium density, and then the medium density will have a transition from the high density to these land uses. No special zoning reductions or provisions are requested for the semi-detached dwelling block, the R2 block. So the standard rear yard depths would all apply in that case. As well, the storm pond and the park would buffer the uses to the south, as well as the presence of the landscaped island, which will be it'll be modified, but required to be reinstated as a condition of the draft approval. As well, it's important to note that this subject location also has higher density in the area, particularly to the west. There's a 5-story apartment building at 325 Lakeview Drive, as well as the existing PUD1 zoning in this location does provide approvals for up to a 5-story apartment building, would just require site plan approval for that. There are neighborhood serving commercial uses in this small commercial development, including a dentist, Tim Hortons, and a pharmacy that provides neighborhood serving commercial uses for these residents and for the residents in the broader area. As well, respecting compatibility, Lakeview Drive is designated as a minor collector road. So it is designated and designed to handle some additional traffic. However, through the TIS and through the design, there wouldn't be much, not expected to be much impact to properties east of the entrance to Street A on Lakeview Drive, as they'd have a quicker exit to the north on the right in, right out, or they'd come to the light to go to the south. As well as there's plenty of amenity and leisure trails, parks, and the Cowan Fields to the north. There's also a condition in the subdivision approvals that speaks to the retention of trees, and where trees are to be removed, compensation is required to be provided to the city in accordance with the city's tree bylaw. With respect to the zoning that's requested, staff are supportive of the requested zoning. The stacked townhouses in the medium density block would have a reduced front yard depth of 5.5 meters to the main building, but there'd still be the required 6 meters for the parking in front of the garages as required. The reduced rear yard depths and exterior side yard widths to Street A, and reduced lot area and increased height from 3 to 4 stories are considered appropriate, as they'll really only impact the internal development of the site, and they won't impact surrounding properties. The development of those blocks will also be done through site plan approval, where matters such as grading, landscaping, drainage, and all those other matters will be addressed to the satisfaction of the city and county. As noted, the current community facilities zoning would permit up to 8 stories for a building that's there today. So planning staff have looked at the additional height from 3 to 4 for the medium density block, which again isn't right abutting any surrounding existing properties. So staff are of the opinion that it can be considered appropriate, as well as the requested relief to the high density block. Staff are supportive of those requests as well. Most of them are designed to site the building closer to Van Sitter Avenue to reduce the impacts on surrounding properties. Overall, staff are supportive of the applications. We believe they're an appropriate balance of requested relief while providing a variety of housing types and choice in this area. This is this probably is the last large greenfield site or infill site in the city for a residential development as such. So staff consider this to be an appropriate infill opportunity. We recommend support of the official plan amendment, approval in principle of the requesting zoning changes, and support of the application for draft approval, subject to the noted 47 conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I ask council for any questions, I see we have people outside. If you'd like to come in and kind of go off to the sides, I'm not sure how well you can hear it all outside. You're more than welcome to come in. Just go off to the side so you're not standing in front of anybody. There might be a couple of seats available, but please, thank you for being here.
Sorry.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And with that, council, have any questions of the planner? Councillor Schattenberg.
One thing we often talk about is parking. So from the mayor through to Mr. Gilbert, how many parking spots are underground in the apartment building? The 2 apartment buildings in total. So that's what, 160 units for the apartments.
I'll have to defer to the applicant. I'm not exactly sure how many are underground and surface, but they are providing the 1.5 spaces per unit, just not the visitor parking, which is 1 per 10 spaces.
And the
Something like that.
4-story stacked townhouses, will they actually have attached garages that you can be able to, I mean, this photo here, it looks nice and pretty, but it looks more like a drone shot taken from a mile up as opposed to any kind of elevation shot to give you an idea about garages or balconies or what the front doors might look like, et cetera, et cetera.
I'll again defer to the applicant about their design for attached garages, but again, I'll note that they're providing the 1.5 spaces required. They're just not providing that 1 per 10 spaces additional visitor parking.
Okay, anyone else? So I'd just like to ask Mr. Gilbert, just want to be clear, there is an opportunity here. We've seen many different plans throughout this, but you did mention something that caught my ear about 8 stories. Under the current zoning, there could have been allowed 8 stories. Is that what I heard you say?
So under the current community facility zoning, the maximum height for a building that's permitted in that, which could be a long-term care facility, a retirement home, a public hospital, a number of other uses, the maximum height is 8 stories currently today.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions from council to the planner? Okay, seeing none, thank you. At this point, I'd ask the applicant or representative come forward. I think Monteith Brown. Welcome and thank you for being here.
This one here, Patrick. It's here as well. When I'm ready for it. Okay, perfect. You just have to open the file and click it. Can everyone hear me okay? Testing, testing. Hello, hello. I'll try to speak up as loud as I can. Good evening, Your Worship, members of council, city staff, and members of the public in attendance tonight. My name is Patrick Mitkowski. I'm a planner with Monteith Brown Planning Consultants. With me tonight is Jay McGuffin, president of Monteith Brown Planning Consultants, and we also have Aaron Blada in attendance tonight. He is the traffic engineer from RC Spencer and Associates. We're here on behalf of Farhi Holdings to provide council with a presentation regarding the proposed development at 401 Lakeview Drive. Bear with me. So just who we are. So Farhi Holdings is one of the largest real estate holdings and development companies in Ontario, focused on providing homes and commercial space in over 58 Ontario communities, which includes Woodstock. And they have a focus on building and developing over 1,500 units across Ontario. Monteith Brown is a London-based planning firm with over 45 years of providing professional land use planning and urban design experience. And we have extensive experience throughout southwestern Ontario, including Woodstock. RC Spencer is a Windsor-based engineering firm with over 35 plus years of providing professional engineering experience, specifically with transportation planning and engineering experience across Ontario, which includes Woodstock and Oxford County. So a bit about the project site. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the site, but just to provide some background, so the site is on the northeast corner of Lakeview Drive and County Road 59, with frontage on both roads, and forms part of the Aldergrange subdivision. The site currently does have a 1-story building, which was most recently leased by Infrastructure Ontario for offices of the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs for a 3-year term, but that just recently expired in January of 2025. And the property was purchased in January of 2022 when the property was no longer required to deliver provincial government services, and no other levels of government or non-for-profit organizations, colleges, universities, etc., expressed interest in the property through the disposition process. So this is a little difficult to see, but just to provide a bit of land use context within the 400 and 800 meter radius. And for context, that would be about a 5 to 10 minute walking distance. So the subject lands are directly adjacent to single and semi-detached dwellings to the north, which would be along Ridgewood Drive and Court, and as well as West View Court. To the east, on Crestwood Court, we have single detached dwellings. To the south, we have single detached dwellings fronting Lakeview Drive, and to the west, we have County Road 59, as well as the commercial plaza that Eric alluded to, which includes the Tim Hortons and the Petro-Canada, as well as the pharmacy and the dental office. As well, to the west, we have the 5-story apartment building, which is known as the Greens of Sally Creek Apartments. And there are a number of parks and recreational amenities in the surrounding context, including Cowan Sports Park, which includes a number of soccer fields, multi-purpose fields, gymnasiums, pickleball courts, walking track. We also have Sally Creek Adult Community Center to the southwest, which is a private community center, and then a number of parks and open space in the surrounding community, including J.J. Williams Park and David Lowe's Memorial Park. So before everyone tonight, we have the proposed planning applications to support the proposed development. As already discussed, official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment are required to rezone and redesignate the subject lands from a community facility designation zone to a mix of residential designations and zones. As well, a plan of subdivision application has been submitted as the formal mechanism to create the new development blocks. So a bit of project history and timeline for council and the members of the public. So the lands were acquired by Farhi in January of 2022, and shortly after, a pre-consultation meeting was held in March of the same year to discuss the proposed development. Staff confirmed that new planning applications would be filed with additional studies to address the proposed development. And between March and September, Farhi and the project team have worked diligently to work towards a complete planning application, which was submitted in September of 2023 and ultimately deemed complete in October of 2023. Following the original submission, a number of public comments were received concerning the proposed development, and accordingly, the team held an in-person community information meeting in April at the Reeves Community Complex to present the proposed development and to receive feedback and input to gauge the level of support from the community and identify concerns or anticipated challenges with the applications. Based on their feedback received by the public between April and October of 2024, Farhi had worked extensively with its project team to incorporate the input into the design vision that will be illustrated through the revised plan on the next slides. And so that revised application was submitted October 2024 to amend the original submitted package to respond to the comments and concerns raised, as well as to address some of the comments that were received by the commenting agencies through the circulation of the original application. So the next series of slides are going to outline the development vision for the site, which will also illustrate the original plan and changes that were made based on city and public input. But before we go to that, I just wanted to outline some of the high-level guiding principles that influenced our development vision for the site. Starting off with the first one is just identifying an opportunity for the reutilization and intensification of an underdeveloped lands, which were considered surplus to the provincial government. Second, providing an opportunity for development within the city's built area boundary, which is not on a greenfield site, on municipal services in keeping with the provincial and county official plan policies. The third is responding to the provincial planning statement direction to accommodate an appropriate attainable and market-based range and mix of residential types to meet the long-term needs. Fourth, providing an opportunity for the extension of existing residential uses and the introduction of new housing forms to contribute to a complete community, the creation of sense of place and age in place opportunities. And lastly, identifying an opportunity to provide public parkland and open space and complementary pedestrian linkages to promote interconnectivity, outdoor amenity and recreation, pedestrian-friendly environment, and to have the public parkland serve as a focal point, which will be illustrated on the revised plan in the following slides. So I'll turn it over to Jay, who's going to provide what the original plan is, what comments we've heard, and what the revised plan provides now.
Thanks, Patrick. Good evening, Your Worship, members of council and members of the public. It's a pleasure to be here this evening. Is this working? So in response to the information tonight, first I'd like to start off by thanking Mr. Gilbert for his presentation and the information that has been brought forward, and like to indicate that we've had the opportunity to review the staff report in detail and all of its recommendations, and are in general support of that report and its recommendations. As Mr. Makowski has identified, this particular plan is coming back to council. This is the first time that council is seeing this full package. There were invitations sent out to council for a public information center that was held last April of 2024, in which we heard from the public when we brought out the original submission, and we diarized all of the information that we had heard and went back with our client to review the comments that we had heard. That included traffic concerns relating to access onto County Road 59, reduction of parking and spillover and adjacent to public roads, and a request to increase the amount of parking being supplied. There were questions about the location of the stormwater management pond and a desire by the general neighborhood to move that pond north, as well as the location of the public park and its size, and the location of the apartment building that was running along Lakeview Drive. It was desired to have that building by the community moved so that it was along the higher order road, County Road 59. So we took that plan and updated all of the various studies that are necessary to support changes in our proposal. And as a result, went through a redesign process. First and foremost, rotating the location of the apartment building, moving it off Lakeshore or Lakeview Drive and moving it onto County Road 59. Expanding and enlarging the public park to the 5% that is required as a statutory requirement, not relying on any cash in lieu of parkland, but rather a full dedication of parkland to the city, extending it along Lakeview Drive, which mimics the open space that is provided on the Alder Grange open space that is identified as a future park in the city's official plan on the south side of the road in this general location. The introduction of a right-in, right-out traffic control system at County Road 59. The maintenance of the existing or of the originally proposed low-density semi-detached dwellings along the perimeter of the site, where it would abut onto the existing low-density residential units beyond this particular site. The reorganization of the mid-rise townhomes, the stacked townhouses in the center of the development. These units do not have garages. These units are designed for rear access. A provision of the 1.5 parking spaces as required by the zoning bylaw, and the introduction of underground parking under the 2 apartment buildings. One of the councillors asked how many parking spaces were underground. That number is 67, and it is within the footprints of both of the towers. There were comments received from the public in terms of relocating the stormwater management pond. Our engineers identified this is the low point of the area and where the water wants to go to, and that is the guiding decision on where the storm pond is. And the site has to match its topography along the exterior. So we have to match grade with the existing lands that are already developed to the north and to the east. And that is where the storm pond is being directed, or the stormwater is being directed. As we move in, this is an aerial view looking west towards the intersection of Lakeview Drive and Oxford County Road 59. So we're looking at, is we're hovering over sort of the corner of the existing residential development looking toward the proposed development. You can see the 5-story apartment building at the very top of the page, which is in existence, and the relationship of that building to the buildings that are being proposed, the open space that's being proposed adjacent to that building, and the interior development that is being proposed. As we walk through, these particular images have been developed by the builder who is going to be building these homes. That is Millstone Homes. At the time of our original submission, the builder had not been selected. So we do now have the builder, and they have developed their floor plans, and these are the floor plans. These are the semi-detached homes that are going to be lining and abutting the existing low-density residential units. This is taking a look to the interior of the site from the front of those semi-detached units to the stacked townhomes that are existing on the interior of the site. And you can see the effect that that has on blocking out a lot of the apartment building to the rear. This is at the intersection of Lakeview Drive and Vansittart, or County Road 59, looking to the northeast. This is looking from one of the existing dwellings backyard as contemplated using Google Street Map and Google aerial photography from a point of elevation in that property, looking into the abutting low-density semi-detached dwellings that are proposed. So the roof lines that you are seeing are the proposed development. This is an image viewing into and across the storm pond from the southeast corner of the development, looking out to the west toward where the 5-story apartment or 7-story apartment buildings are along Vansittart. Mr. Gilbert did an excellent overview of the technical studies that have been undertaken. Just a reminder, phase 1 and 2 environmental site assessment, servicing and stormwater management and feasibility, traffic impact and assessment, and sightline analysis. That was also undertaken peer review by, I understand, county staff and Paradigm Transportation Solutions, Inc., which is a third-party consultant retained on behalf of the city of Woodstock, a stage 3 archaeological assessment, noise feasibility study, tree inventory and preservation plan, a street tree planting plan, and a shadow study. All of those materials were not only completed the first time, but any of the relevant documents that were necessary to be updated were updated to respond to the changes that we brought back for the complete application in October 2024 that are in front of you this evening. With that, I'd like to turn the presentation over to Mr. Aaron Blatta with RC Spencers. He's just going to give a quick overview of the methodology and findings of his traffic study.
Thank you, Jay. Through you, Your Worship. My name is Aaron Blatta, and I'm an owner of RC Spencer Associates Incorporated, which is a Southwestern Ontario-based company. I'm a designated consulting engineer, a professional traffic operations engineer, and a road safety professional. Corporately, most of my time is spent preparing traffic impact studies like these, but I also do dabble in some other things like corridor studies, larger plans, and specifically traffic signal design, amongst other things. But occasionally, I do also offer technical presentations through the University of Windsor, as well as through the Ontario Traffic Council and the Canadian Institute for Transportation Engineers. I do thank you for the opportunity today to present our traffic impact study overview. For this project, we specifically studied the signalized intersection of Lakeview Drive at Vansittart Avenue, commonly known as Oxford Road 59, We also studied the proposed site accesses at Lakeview Drive and at Van Sittard Avenue. For the purpose of our modeling, we referred to the proposed site plan that was provided to our office, and it indicated a right-in, right-out control at Van Sittard Avenue, and you heard some of the permeations of the plan that we ultimately arrived at, as well as an all-directional access at Lakeview Drive. Our trip generation estimates were based on the site plan provided to our office. And according to our most current industry references, the proposed site plan could generate 25 trips entering and 78 trips exiting during the critical AM peak hour, and 69 trips entering and 43 trips exiting during the critical PM peak hour. At the adjacent signalized intersection, the collected turning movement counts indicated that the westbound volumes totaled 59 during the critical AM peak hour. This is approximately equivalent to 1 vehicle per minute. And so just to give you a sense, I've got a graphic there that shows how those totals come up together. And I also want to point out that during the critical PM peak hour, westbound volumes totaled 39, which was even lower. This is approximately equivalent to 1 vehicle every 1.5 minutes. So that is the current traffic demand that we see on Lakeview Drive. Therefore, it is our professional opinion that the subject signalized intersection has plenty of capacity to accept increased peak hour traffic volumes. To be abundantly conservative, traffic was projected to 5 and 10-year horizons, which is standard for our industry. We applied a 2% growth rate compounded annually, and that was applied to the collected traffic volumes. And for context, a 1% annual growth rate is typical for arterial roadways, but to be abundantly conservative, the Road Authority requested that we apply a 2% growth rate to the modeling. Last year, as part of our sensitivity analysis on this site, the collected peak hour traffic volumes were increased by a factor of 1.5. So took the volumes that were out there, multiplied by 1.5, and then we further increased it annually by 2%, compounded annually, to arrive at an overly conservative estimate. I would consider that the extreme growth scenario of area traffic growth. The results indicate that the subject signalized intersection has the capacity to accept even an extreme growth scenario. So without getting too into the specifics of the industry, I want to focus on the language. A level of service. Level of service effectively qualifies the metrics outputted by the traffic model. It's very similar to what you would see in school. Level of service A means that delay is very low, while level of service F means that delay has reached a state of failure. This slide that you see here indicates that even in the extreme growth scenario, total traffic 2034, at worst, we're seeing a level service E on the westbound approach. Nothing reaches critical mass. So clearly there's sufficient capacity within the signalized intersection to accept the additional traffic that's generated by this proposed development. As an aside, we also looked at the posted speed limit along Lakeview Drive. Current industry best practices do suggest the speed limit should be reduced to 40 kilometers an hour from the existing 50 kilometer an hour limit. However, since speed limit changes are implemented at the city's discretion, not at the developer's discretion, we have notified the Road Authority and await their decision. If the speed limit on Lakeview Drive is lowered to the recommended 40 kilometers an hour, along with the proposed median modifications that were discussed, the proposed Street A site access poses no undue hazard to the safety of Lakeview Drive traffic operations. Finally, as part of our review, we explored the technical references available for evaluating peak parking demand. Although the city of Woodstock does require 1.5 parking spaces per unit, which is standard per their zoning bylaw, plus the visitor parking that was denoted of 1 per 10, the Institute of Transportation Engineers has conducted studies and has reported that the average peak demand rate is approximately 1.27 for low-rise multifamily housing and 1.23 for mid-rise multifamily housing. The developer is proposing 1.5 parking spaces per unit, which is above and beyond the thresholds that we just identified. And accordingly, we concluded that the proposed parking supply will sufficiently accommodate the peak parking demand. In conclusion, it's important to note that all study intersections will operate at good levels of service in all horizon years post-build-out. Based on the provincial warrants, a dedicated eastbound left turn lane is not justified at the intersection of Street A at Lakeview Drive. The existing conditions are just fine. And the sight lines at the proposed Street A site access appear to be clear of potential obstructions, save for the landscape median that is located southwest of the proposed Lakeview Drive site access. The developer is proposing that there be a reduction to the east end of that median and will ensure that any vegetation impacting the sight lines will be removed. If the speed limit on Lakeview Drive is reduced to 40 kilometers an hour, and if that median is modified as prescribed, the Lakeview Drive site access will pose no undue hazard to area traffic operations. The right-in, right-out access at Vincennes Avenue exhibits unobstructed sight lines toward the south if you're trying to make that right turn restricted access, sort of restricted egress from the site. The proposed parking supply of 102 and 240 spaces should adequately accommodate the peak parking demand generated by the 68 stacked townhomes and 160 apartment units respectively. So ultimately, this is a development proposal that matches the intent and does not have a significant traffic impact on operations or on traffic safety. And as mentioned multiple times this evening, one of our competitors, Paradigm Transportation Solutions, peer-reviewed our report and concluded that the methodology is consistent with industry best practices and that the conclusions in the report are understandable. So I will leave it with that and turn it back over to Monteith Brown. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. So just in conclusion, in our opinion, the application package that is before council this evening is consistent with the provincial planning statement, maintains the general intent and purpose of the Oxford County official plan. You heard Mr. Gilbert opine on the uses that are currently permitted on the site in terms of the intensity, as well as the heights that are currently permitted within the existing zoning on the site. The development that is proposed is less than that height, maintains the general intent and purpose of the City of Woodstock zoning bylaw, and represents sound land use planning. That concludes our formal presentation. Happy to answer any questions of council together with Mr. Matkowski and Mr. Blada. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions of council? Councillor Wismer Van Meer.
Through your worship, just a quick question about the 2 apartment buildings that are proposed. Has there been any consideration given to having commercial implemented or added into these developments? Commercial is a concern that we hear time and time again in this part of the city. I'm just curious if that's something that's been considered or would be considered.
Through your worship, sorry, I was just looking for a photo of the apartment buildings. Commercial was discussed. There is a challenge with the integration of commercial into multi-rise developments. It is something that I think is best answered by the proponent themselves in terms of the market analysis that they had undertaken. They had undertaken significant market analysis in terms of can they support the underground parking, can they support X number of stories in the development. The pro forma work that went into that did not include the provision of commercial. I wouldn't say that a long term that there couldn't be a consideration for that, but it was considered and it was not found to be contributory to the proposal.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Schattenberg.
Yeah, from the mayor through to, I guess, Mr. McGuffin. Will there still be space to park on the street, on Street A? Will that be a regular street with sidewalks on both sides?
It's a reduced width right-of-way, but there will still be space on that street to park.
I guess a bit of a follow-up, that traffic island, if you want to call it that, on Lakeview Drive, how much of that would have to be removed for this plan to work, as far as especially having cars coming in and out of Street A from Lakeview with just the one, if there was just the one access from Lakeview?
So if you can see on this image, we have dashed that scale back to the central median. That was a result of the sightline analysis undertaken by Mr. Blada's firm for safe ingress egress. I don't have the specific meter dimension, but it's not that far.
Anyone else? I do have a question myself, and I'm going to direct this to Mr. Blada, if he doesn't mind. The parking study, I noted, was done in 2021. Of course, in the height of COVID and everything else in the world. I think you did a fantastic job, and I just want to make sure that the consideration of the time frame that initially was done, and may I assume that's why the additional 1.5% and the 2% was added? I just want to clarify that, if I could.
Through you, Your Worship, I believe you're referring to the traffic impact study, not the parking study.
Correct. Yes.
Thank you. So regarding the traffic impact study, it was based on traffic data that was collected in March 2021. And so when we started off the process, as Patrick had alluded to earlier on in the presentation, the client purchased the property in 2022 and had with them a traffic impact study that was submitted to them from a prior owner. And so we identified that we asked the city, can we use this data, or should we be looking to get our own? They identified that we could use the data. So we simply used that data. And here we are 3 years later in 2025, post-COVID. And we have also identified that it would be good, and that was also identified in the peer review, it would be good to update those counts to validate. However, given the sensitivity analysis that was conducted, the 1.5 times multiplier plus the 2% compounded annually for an extreme growth scenario, that we would simply identify that as being part of the site plan control application process to affirm that, yeah, everything that was done prior to was not a problem. But all that to say, so myself, I live in Leamington, Ontario, which is also same type of blue collar type town, people driving to and from work. And during COVID, we noticed a bit of a dip right when everything shut down. But as soon as things opened back up, traffic largely returned to normal. The biggest significant, I say it was the most significant difference that we saw was actually in the GTA, where people were more typically working from home and continued to do so. And then we saw those volumes kind of dip back down and stay there. But ultimately, even those have started to rebound. So in the grand scheme of things, we're fairly confident, and so is the peer reviewer, that the traffic data that was collected at that time is sufficient for the purpose of analysis. However, we do fully intend to update those counts, but we are waiting for construction to stop and for us to get in there to do those counts while construction is shut down for the various bridge works that are happening around.
I was going to lead into my next question. How does that affect if that was a factor? So thank you very much. Anyone else? Councillor Schattenberg.
Yeah, question again through to the developers or the planners. The 10 units that are backing onto Lakeview, so I guess if it's drawn as 10, is that actually 40 units as far as being 4-level stackable townhouses? And if so, would their elevation be extremely high compared to the, say, ranches that are mostly across the street? I know there's 2-story houses across the street as well, but there's also a lot of executive ranches across the street. So those would be 4 stories that would be significantly higher than some of the houses across the street?
Through you, Your Worship, they would be 2-story. Pardon me, they would be stacked. And by that, I mean there would be one unit above another unit. That's what I meant, not story, but stacked. It actually comes out to 3.5 stories. And I'm just looking to go back to the imagery that we have on the ground. And we don't have a clear image of that. If I come in on this one, you can see it. So that is sort of the relationship. Patrick, do you recall, do we have... Okay, so this is what it would be looking across the street from the proposed semis, and the relation of that. This would be from a standing height. Average height for this would be 5 feet 6 inches in terms of what that view looks like. So that is the proposed impact at the street level.
Just to clarify then, each unit basically is 2 stories. You kind of have your living room, kitchen on one level, then you go up to the bedroom. So the main floor could in theory have part of the unit be underground with
That is
bedrooms on the second floor.
Yes, that is correct.
Any other questions of council?
We do have a video, Your Worship.
Okay.
I'm not sure where it's at on the system, though.
Please, yes.
Person upstairs, so you see it through moving around. Thank you.
And just for the benefit of the, it's not streaming on the screen. Sorry, for the benefit of council, this is a video. It's been updated with the new development proposal, but it is a video that was prepared for the public meeting back in April of 2024. And to the councillor's questions a moment ago, it should speak to that relationship of, I'm not really sure what we've got going here. That's the conclusion. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. Any questions of council? Seeing none? Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
So at this point, I'd ask anybody that does come up to speak, there is a sign-in form. I'll ask you to fill that out after you speak, but please, before you sit down again, please fill that out. That way you're ensured to be on the list. And at this point, I'll ask if anybody would like to come in favor of the application. That's what I expected. It's okay. Anybody would like to speak against the application? Okay, we'll start one at a time. Okay, thank you. I just remind you to please state your name, Mr. Bell, for the record, and address. And like I said, afterwards, I'll ask you to fill out the forms to respect everyone's time. Okay? And I'd ask that you speak into the microphone so everybody has the best chance to hear you as best as possible.
Good evening.
Okay.
My name is John Bell, and I live at 444 Lakeview Drive. I'm one of a team of 6 who have worked hard over the last 16 months to represent our community and keep you and the community informed of their concerns with the application. Joining me tonight are Dan Major, Dave King, Bob Axon, and Ted Young. You might want to raise your hands, fellows. They represent various areas of the community. In preparation for this meeting, we met with the community in the town hall, and they ratified and requested that we present the following as representing their concerns to you tonight. Lucky me, like last time, I again drew the short straw. Can I go forward here? Jeff, get me started here.
To go forward, just click down.
Oh, down, okay.
And we're just going to make sure that they're actually sharing the presentation. So just give me 2 seconds here.
Okay, so to go forward,
Just gonna share it.
what do I click to go forward? Just the button?
This
I have
little-
to click
this
each
little
button?
arrow right there. Yeah.
Okay, so I can't just click the mouse.
No.
Hmm.
Right there.
Okay. I know you have heard directly from the community about their many concerns, and under the Planning Act, many may wish to speak tonight as well. But as this,
There it is.
you hear me okay? Right. Many may wish to speak tonight as well. But as this application moves forward, the Planning Act requires that we make formal representations to you at this meeting with regard to land use planning matters in order to participate in any future appeal at the Ontario Land Tribunal. And the Planning Act also requires that we present the information pertinent to your decision that we would rely upon at the tribunal. Additionally, due to the changes in Bill 185, we also need to obtain your agreement that our concerns are valid. And should the applicant choose not to address them prior to your consideration of the application, we ask that you deny the application so our concerns and the expert opinion supporting them will be fully examined and arbitrated against those of the applicants at the OLT. Our goal, therefore, is not to stop this development, but rather to initiate 5 changes within the intent of the Planning Act, the official plan, and our zoning bylaws to make this proposal safe and appropriately integrate it with our surrounding community. While we recognize that the applicant has made some changes to their original submission, they have given little consideration to our primary concerns. So we come here tonight to state our 5 requests to you and ask that they be considered as you make your final decision on Thursday. The Planning Act in Section 2 also requires that council shall have regard to matters of provincial interest as shown on this chart. You fulfill these responsibilities by maintaining the official plan and zoning bylaws that we rely as a community upon for our continuing protection and quality of life. The Planning Act also requires in Section 5124 that council, in considering a draft plan of subdivision, regard A, the effect of the development of the proposed subdivision on matters of provincial interest, as I just showed in Section 2. C, whether the plan conforms to the official plan and adjacent plans of subdivision, if any. And E, the number, width, location, and proposed grades and elevation of highways, which means local roads, and the adequacy of them. Our 5 requests will refer to and rely on these protections. And finally, our 5 requests rely on the county official plan, which also requires that council evaluate applications for plans of subdivision as being consistent with the objectives and policies of the official plan, designed to reduce any negative effect on surrounding land uses, the transportation network, or significant natural features. And lastly, designed to be integrated with adjacent developments. When we purchased our subdivision properties, we did our due diligence, and we knew these lands would be developed. But we also knew that we had all of these protections to ensure the quality and safety of any new development, to ensure a design that would compatibly integrate with our surrounding community. When Albert Hargraves developed our Alder Grange subdivision plan in 2003, as shown here on our registered plan, he made full provision for the future development and integration of these lands to the north, such that they could be developed without impact on our community or its safety. Zooming in, you can see he made provision for a large landscape center island on Lakeview Drive that the Parks Department classifies as high horticulture. On the north side at 1, he provided a primary west entrance to the property, positioned first of all to provide immediate safe access to OR 59 and ensure no flow of traffic through or impact on our subdivision. 2, to be well spaced away from the island. And 3, to provide space for the necessary left-hand turn lane onto southbound OR 59. This exit has been used safely by the government for over 20 years. At 2, he provided a second east entrance to the property, positioned first of all to meet the city requirement for 2 exits from a property with more than 26 units. 2, positioned so as not to interfere with the island and to operate as a 3-way stop, just like the one he designed by the island at the other end of Lakeview Drive. And lastly, together with Block 27, to provide for the depth of future lots to the north backing onto Crestwood Drive. At 3, he provided water, sewer, and stormwater pipe stubs to the property line within that east road allowance to avoid having to later dig up Lakeview Drive. And finally, he put in place the 1-foot reserves marked 4 and 5 along the length of the island to preserve and protect it from encroachment and to ensure the future location of these pre-planned exits. From there, he went on to develop Alder Grange within the requirements of the Planning Act, the official plan, and the zoning bylaws without exception or any special provisions. We rely on these provisions and protections as detailed in our registered plan of subdivision. When the government chose to sell this property in 2021, they too did their due diligence and recognized all these protections. They applied to rezone these lands as low-density residential in conformance with the surrounding community, and they submitted this concept for its future development in compliance with those provisions and demonstrating the ability of a plan to be created that conforms with our adjacent plan of subdivision. Zooming in at 1, it respected the reserve, protecting the island and the road allowances to the property. At 2, it provided an R1 block in conformance with the infill policy of the official plan and the R1 homes across the street on our adjacent plan. At 3, it provided an R2 block, separating a higher density R3 block in regard to the adjacent subdivision. At 4, on the balance of the land, it provided R3 blocks in recognition of the official plan location criteria that new high-density R4 locations be adjacent to the central area and community services rather than adjacent to low-density areas. And in addition to conforming to Section 2 and Section 51 of the Planning Act, it also conformed to the existing official plan and zoning bylaws and increased the county's 30-unit per hectare density standard that council has approved in all the recent subdivisions by 40%. When the applicant chose to purchase this property, they too did their due diligence and were also aware of these protections and provisions because they even asked the city if they could assume the government application. Instead, however, they chose to proceed on the assumption that they could ignore these provisions and substantially override the intent of our official plan and bylaws, as well as the advice of county staff regarding no access would be allowed to OR 59. And they proposed this draft plan of subdivision containing a local street A and 5 blocks. Our concerns with that plan are as marked. Number 1, the restricted northbound exit to OR 59 that forces all southbound traffic to traverse Street A to the east exit and then back through our subdivisions to reach OR 59. 2, the impact of locating the east exit across the reserve block in our subdivision plan on Long Lakeview Drive. 3, the proposed medium density block along Lakeview Drive. 4, the 14-meter 4-story heights on the medium density block. And 5, the zoning and overdevelopment of the high density block. Zooming in on the proposed OR 59 northbound only exit, you can see in yellow that it is in the middle of one of the most dangerous community safety zones in the county. And you can see in red the illegal left and U-turns and the safety impact created at that northbound exit by drivers willing to make illegal left-hand turns for immediate access to southbound OR 59. You may have noticed me chuckle a few minutes ago when the video was played, because the video taker actually made an illegal left-hand turn onto southbound 59 to make his video. However, those illegal turns are happening today at the similar exit across the street at the gas station across the road. And we also note a resident made a submission that's included in the planning report expressing the same safety concerns with that decision. Similarly, as shown in yellow, the sight line will be impaired by transport trucks parked on the shoulder while their drivers access the Tim Hortons outlet. The exit will also, marked in green, take out 2 of the large public space trees on the property line that have been noted in the tree report that should be preserved. Of even greater concern to our community is the safety impact of the resulting flow of drivers wishing to make legal access to southbound 59, estimated as 85% of the 500 residents. As shown in red, they would have to go around Street A, which even though the accesses that Mr. Hargraves laid out were 20 meters wide. The proposal here is for a narrower, I believe, 18-meter wide road access. As shown in red, they would have to go around Street A and then back through our adjacent subdivision to reach OR 59, rather than exit directly via the pre-planned safe exit marked in green, as used by the government today. That adverse flow and its safety impact was a major concern expressed by the community at the April open house. We note that the applicant also chose to ignore the safe exit onto Lakeview Drive near OR 59, contrary to the pre-application advice of county that OR 59 access was prohibited. We also note that county staff subsequently denied the applicant's request for OR 59 access in the original submission, but it was rejected by community planning and subsequently overturned in granting that limited one-way northbound exit. Excuse me. We see no justification for that decision. In light of the adverse safety impact, we request that council require a draft plan revision as originally requested by county staff, providing access from the property via the safe west exit on Lakeview Drive prior to your approval. Zooming in on the proposed east exit on Lakeview Drive, you can see that it crosses the registered reserve block 29 marked in red, rather than use the proposed pre-planned location provided on our adjacent plan of subdivision marked with a 1. This would result in the removal of the end of the landscaped island, marked 2, and the excavation of Lakeview Drive to relocate the provided utility stubs into the new road allowance, marked 3. As that relocation reduces the sight line marked 4, as shown in yellow, the applicant now proposes to clear cut 14 of the 15 trees on the island, as we will illustrate later. And rather than hide the stormwater pond behind block 27, as per the government proposal outlined in red, the block 5 stormwater pond would now jut out along Lakeview Drive. That reserve block 29 was included in our registered plan to locate the east exit and prevent all of those impacts. It can only be removed by council passing what is called a deeming bylaw to remove that protection from our registered plan. A registered plan normally cannot be altered for 8 years, but the Planning Act allows a council to alter a registered plan after that point in time if it is in the interest of the town and the community. We see no reason for that relocation or anything preventing that east exit from being located as pre-planned and in conformity with our adjacent plan of subdivision. We request that council advise the applicant that they will not consider a deeming bylaw to remove the reserve block 29 in that location, as it is not in the interest of the city or the adjacent plan to do so, and that council also require a draft plan revision showing the use of the pre-planned exit prior to their approval of the application. We also note that a deeming bylaw is solely at the discretion of City Council, and council refusal to do so may not be appealed to or ordered by the Ontario Land Tribunal. Returning to the full draft plan, the proposal locates a part of the medium density block R3 marked with a 3 along the north side of Lakeview Drive. This does not conform to the infill policies of the official plan. and the incompatibility of the proposed setbacks and structures, particularly those of 4 stories, do not conform to those of the 1 and 2 stories in our adjacent plan of subdivision or those directly across the south side of Lakeview Drive. While the applicant suggests that they would be buffered by the trees on the island, we now note they are proposed to be clear-cut. A low-density R1 block in that area with standard setbacks would provide that infill conformity and compatibility. We request that Council ask the applicant to submit a revised draft plan with an infill conforming R1 block on the north side of Lakeview prior to their approval of the application. With regard to the medium density R3 block Mark IV, we will just speak to the request to increase the height from 3 stories to 11 meters to 4 stories and 14 meters. Apart from the privacy and accessibility concerns raised by forcing tenants of stacked townhomes to carry themselves and their kids and their groceries up 2 flights of stairs to reach their front doors, that increase in height would be contrary to not only the characteristics of our surrounding neighborhood, but also the characteristics of the whole city, and would set an unassailable precedent for all future infill development throughout the city. We request that Council either deny the request for 4 stories or limit the maximum height of any R3 structure to 11 meters. Finally, with regard to Block 3, Mark 5, the zoning of a new high-density location adjacent to low-density residential development that does not have considerable separation from the low-density area and is remote from the city core, its services and direct transit would not conform to these multiple policies or intent of the official plan. Reference has been made to the 5-story apartment building to the west as part of the Sally Creek development. That apartment building, though, is limited to 5 stories by the bylaw and is also located located such that it complies with the official plan requirement for a large high-density building to be located in an area remote from residential. And that building is located between a large park and a plaza and a community center across the road. It fits the official plan. The special provisions requested for that block to significantly reduce the OR 59 setback from 13.5 to 4 meters, the landscaped open space from 35% to 27%, and eliminate parking, visitor parking, would result in the opinion of both of our independent planners over development of this block. There is simply not enough room on this block to contain the requested density and meet the space requirements to support it. We request that Council deny the request to eliminate 30 visitor parking spaces and request a revised draft plan meeting the setback and open space requirements and providing a more compatible building form than high-density apartment blocks. In particular, as shown here, the reduced setback along OR 59 from 13.5 meters to 6 meters requires the removal of 2 of the large public space trees. The ones without the shading. Can I point at it? It's a jumping mouse. Okay. These 2 large trees. The first one to the north is the largest 10-meter diameter tree, and this tree is almost as big. And as you can see, because the building is 6 meters from the property line, the tree canopy would bump into the building. So they must go. And they put the shaded ones, the buildings, the 4 other trees are then within the building is within the critical root zone of 4 other trees, threatening their destruction. We also note that the proposed tree barrier dotted in yellow there is within the critical root zone, contrary to the bylaw requirement for tree protection barrier. And also note in this illustration down at the bottom, the clear cut of the 14 trees on the island. Further, the noise study requires a 4.2 meter high brick sound barrier wall to be located outside the critical root zone to separate the proposed apartment buildings from OR 59. Doesn't look like there's too much room there. If you add the critical root zone plus the 1 foot requirement away from it plus 4.2 meters, assuming your walls got to be an equal distance from the building as its height, the requirement is at least for the standard requirement of 13.5 meters and more likely 15 meters. Note the tree bylaw destruction definition on this chart. Disturbance of any part of the critical root zone such that it is likely to be killed is a definition of destroyed. And the applicant's tree inventory and preservation plan acknowledges there are several large trees lining the western edge of the property along 59 and references the proposed damage to their root zone. And if the trees should die as a result of the proposed impact, it is recommended they be replaced in situ. We request that Council consider either an environmental protection EP2 zone to protect these boundary trees or add them to the protection list in the bylaw as for the trees bounding the east perimeter of Alder Grange as shown on this picture here. North is that direction in case you're lost. You'll also note the exit I referred to at the island at the other end of Lakeview with the 3-way stop, which is exactly what was designed in our original plan back at the front of Lakeview Drive. As the government concept demonstrated, these lands can be developed in conformity with our existing adjacent plan of subdivision with a 40% increase in density without zoning to high density and with our existing official plan and bylaws. We ask that you support our request to have these changes incorporated in the applicant's proposal, either prior to your consideration or through arbitration by the tribunal. Should you deny the application, we ask that you cite our 5 concerns in the reason for your denial so that they may be arbitrated at the tribunal and the applicant required to provide their justification for ignoring the advice of county staff against exiting to OR 59, for ignoring the registered reserve on Lakeview Drive, ignoring the infill provisions of the official plan along Lakeview Drive, ignoring the 3-story limit on townhomes, and ignoring the official plan intents and directions regarding the location of new high-density development. Our lawyer and planner estimate that the tribunal hearing would require 3 days to educate these 5 concerns. We would be happy to answer any questions or provide any additional information you require either now or following our delegation to council on Thursday. Thank you for your attention. We will email these remarks and attachment illustrations to each of you.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. Any questions of Mr. Bell? We covered a lot of information there, so. Council have any questions at all? Okay, seeing none. I'd ask that you just remind you, Mr. Bell, to fill out the forms, please, before you sit down.
I will.
Yep, thank you. As mentioned, a lot of information was brought forward there, so I'd ask to respect everybody's time that I'm asking not to repeat anything, please. Thank you very much.
Okay.
A name, address for the record.
Thank you, Your Worship. My name's Mike Major. I do not live in the area, but I'm a former senior planner with the City of Toronto, and I was asked by the local residents and my brother, who lives adjacent to the site, to provide an opinion on the appropriateness of the development, and I'm going to focus solely on the provincial planning statement and the official plan. The 2024 provincial planning statement is intended to ensure sufficient land shall be made available to accommodate an appropriate range and mix of land uses to meet the projected requirements of the current and future residents. This does not mean that every redevelopment opportunity should look to maximize the number of units that can be physically be achieved on a site, but rather to ensure that the municipality has properly considered how it will meet its future housing needs on a citywide basis and in a manner that is appropriate for the site and the surrounding area. Good planning must ultimately prevail. Section 7.2.2 of your official plan recognizes this and states that it is not intended that residential intensification will occur uniformly throughout the city. The location, form, and intensity of residential intensification will be determined by the policies of the various land use designations with the intention of permitting smaller scale developments such as individual infill lots in areas designated as low density residential and directing larger scale projects to areas designated as medium and high density residential and the central area. While most residents, I believe, are supportive of residential intensification of this site, we believe that the provincial objectives can be met with a less intensive form of development, one that is more in keeping with the low density character of the surrounding area, more in keeping with your official plan policies, and one that minimizes the impacts on the local residents. With respect to the official plan, section 7.1.1 states that the city promotes appropriate infill development and intensification of land and buildings in existing built-up areas of the municipality. The policies of this plan are designed to facilitate intensification while ensuring that new development is complementary to existing development. This proposal is not complementary to the existing land use pattern. It introduces a form of development that does not exist in the immediate area. The surrounding community is almost entirely low-density residential, and future development should respect the established character of the neighborhood by maintaining that low-scale built form. Section 7.2.1 states that it is council's policy to ensure that new housing is of a human scale and is sensitive to and improves the existing physical character of the area. Using the criteria established in the official plan to guide new development, a significant portion of the site is proposed for high-density residential development with a net density of 150 units per hectare. This is more than the original proposal that was shown to the community and above the maximum allowable density of 150 units per hectare, and is excessive given the low density nature of the area. The proposed net total density of this site is 85 units per hectare, which is significantly higher than the surrounding neighborhood. The density of any new development of the site should be reduced significantly to ensure greater compatibility with the existing neighborhood, where a maximum of 30 units per hectare is permitted. Section 7.2.4.1.3 of your official plan sets out a number of important considerations when evaluating development proposals on vacant or underutilized sites within established residential areas by plan of subdivision. The nature of the proposed residential development will be evaluated having regard for the type of housing found in the surrounding neighborhood. As previously stated, the proposal introduces forms of development, i.e. a 7-story apartment building and stacked townhouses that are not currently found in the area. Any new residential lots with direct exposure to an established residential street will be consistent with the size of lots within a 2-block area on the same street. And new residential development will maintain setbacks and spacing between dwellings consistent with the established built pattern. The high density nature of the proposed development results in a lot and setback pattern that is inconsistent with this policy. Council should also consider the extent to which the proposed development provides for the retention of any desirable vegetation or natural features. My brother, I believe, is going to speak to a lot of that, so I won't go over that. Given the development site is large, with few development constraints, greater compliance with the existing zoning standards in terms of setbacks, lot size, landscaped open space, and parking is easily achievable and appropriate. With respect to medium density residential, we note that the maximum net residential density permitted under section 7.2.5 is 70 units per acre. The developer proposes stacked townhouses with a net residential density of 75 units per hectare. Additionally, the city's official plan states that any further medium density residential designations will be consistent with certain design criteria. Sites which abut arterial or collector roads or sites situated in a manner which prevents traffic movements from the site from flowing through any adjoining low-density residential areas. The proposed Street A has direct access to Lakeview Drive, which services an entirely low-density residential area. This will put additional traffic volumes on the local road. I believe Mr. Bell spoke to a lot of that, so I'll move on. Any further medium-density residential designations will be limited to sites which are adjacent to the central area, designated shopping centers, service commercial areas, community facilities, high-density residential districts, or developed medium-density residential districts. This site, again, is in the middle of a low-density residential neighborhood, quite distant from many of the above. Finally, with respect to high-density residential development, it is generally, the official plan states that it will generally be discouraged adjacent to low-density residential development, except where such low-density development is proposed for redevelopment to higher density land uses, or where considerable separation between the low-density area and the proposed high-density development exists. The official plan further states that the height and density limitations applicable to the various forms of development allowed in the high-density residential district shall be determined on the basis of the nature, character, and scale of adjacent land uses. The proposed 7-story height limit is inconsistent with the surrounding built form, which is predominantly 1 and 2 stories. In conclusion, the revised proposal represents only a nominal change from their earlier submission, with overall density of the site remaining a serious concern. It still represents an overdevelopment of the site located in the middle of a low-density residential community. We believe if the community's concerns are earnestly considered, a revised proposal can achieve a reasonable intensification of the site that meets provincial and municipal housing objectives, is more consistent with the city's official plan, and results in a development that is compatible with and sensitive to the established character of the surrounding neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions of Mr. Major? Councillor Wismer Van Meer.
Through you, Your Worship. Mr. Major, you mentioned a few different sections of the official plan. I was trying to keep up to writing them down. Before you leave, do you mind just sharing them with somebody or just letting us know? I just want to go back and just to reference. I got a few of them, but not all of them. So I just hope I can grab those from you at some point.
I've submitted my talking points to the councillors.
Perfect.
And the mayor.
Perfect. I was pretty sure we had some of those, but I wasn't sure if everything was listed, so I appreciate that.
Okay.
Any other council questions? Okay, seeing none. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Major, please state your name and address, and I'd please ask again, try not to repeat anything that has been brought forward.
That's why mine will be fairly brief.
Thank you.
My name is Dan Major. I'm a resident of 16 Ridgewood Court. I back right on to the proposed development site. So not to reiterate a lot of the information that was given by the previous presenters, though I totally support what they've said, but I'll be looking at the environmental aspects. So starting with my concerns about the forestry report and tree preservation. Firstly, the excessive density that's being proposed cannot accommodate any significant tree preservation. Of the 163 trees that they have in the inventory, they're looking at clear cutting basically 143 of those trees. That's a pretty significant tree loss. And for us as homeowners in the area, you can imagine the impact on our loss of privacy, the dust, the noise pollution that we'll probably have to endure over the next 3 years or more as they do site prep and do their construction. Now, the most disturbing thing really that the community as a whole should be thinking about is the environmental impact that the removal of these trees will have in the, it'll be removing approximately 2,500 kilograms of carbon sequestering potential, which is very, very significant. Now, the developer may argue that they intend to replace each of the trees being removed with 3 60 mil trees as per the city policy. And this equates to 429 compensatory trees. However, it'll take decades to replace that biomass that the larger trees will be taken away. I might add that the revised concept plan submitted by FARI indicates only 172 new trees. Now, so 172 new trees, and this equates to a shortfall of 257 trees that they should be compensating for. Now, I know that the Parks Department can take cash in lieu instead of the tree planting on site. Now, if this were to be the case, I would suggest that any of the excess trees be planted on the north side, the west side of 59 Highway between Ridgewood Drive and 17 to the roundabout, and not take the cash in lieu. I'd like to acknowledge that in earlier conversations with the FARI group, that they indicated they would address some of our concerns by considering the preservation of existing vegetation along our adjoining properties during the site plan process is the only way that we can assure that we're going to get protection. I mean, having it approved now will not give us that assurance. And of course, as a public, we won't have any input at site plan. So we do realize that growth and development is inevitable, and there is a need for affordable housing. Legislation such as Bill 23, More Homes Built Faster, is not perfect, and some of its policies will likely change or be modified as they find some of the shortcomings and flaws in the bill. And with government programs such as standardized, pre-approved catalog of home designs being, I guess, put in by the federal government, will streamline the approval process and help developers and builders alike, and hopefully provide affordable housing. So I respectfully, and I say respectfully, suggest that it's not the municipal council's job to build homes, but it is their job to build communities. And that's what we're asking you to consider as you review this application. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Any questions of Mr. Major? Deja vu there. Seeing none, I just remind you, please fill out the form. Thank you. Welcome. State name and address for the record, please.
Tony Lilikis, 424 Lakeview Drive. Okay.
And again, I just ask that you respect and keep new comments coming forward, please.
Yeah. Okay.
Is this it here?
Yeah, that's the first one.
Okay.
And then for the next one, I just click the next one.
What'll happen is the person who's running the camera, they'll click, and then you just have to scroll down.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a
Okay.
button.
Okay, I can just scroll down.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, this is a letter to the mayor and council members and manager to development planning. And before I make comments on the new FARI amended application, I'd like to discuss briefly the good draft plan from Her Majesty the King, Government of Province of Ontario, GSP Group, June 23rd, 2021. And that's the view one. It was reasonable for low-density residential 114 units. This would blend in with the Alter Grange established community around it. Most of the large, healthy trees near Highway 59 can be preserved. I think it's easily acceptable by the Alter Grange community with the residential R1 zoning. For this plan, the lot sizes on Lakeview Drive for the single detached were smaller, but still blends in reasonably well with Alter Grange community. Two nice exit entries on 401 Lakeview Drive on West End and one on East End lot. That's on the view 1 and 2. The West End first access near Highway 59. I'll put this down. Two nice exits on 401 Lakeview Drive, one West End and one East End lot. The West End first access near Highway 59 will have the brunt of the traffic to Highway 59 with much less interference. The R1 zone single detached 9 units facing Lakeview Drive is attractive and blends in with Lakeview Drive. The traffic would be much lower around the island with the 114 units, and it's manageable with the 2 exit entries. The revised application for the official plan, amended draft plan from FARI Holding Corporation, October 30th, 2024, still remains completely opposite to the original Province of Ontario GSP Group, Inc., for blending in with the established community around it. For Lakeview Drive, I find the plan by GSP Group much more acceptable for Alta Grange community. The new revised Fari plan still includes 2 high-density apartment buildings for 160 units and now includes 4-story stacked townhouses for 68 units that do not blend in with the Alta Grange single-dwelling neighborhood. The revised amended version, View 4 and 3, includes 254 units residence compared to the 114 for Province of Ontario. GSP Group, Inc. Finally, where I live, on 424 Drive, looking across the street is the exit at 401 Lakeview. We will face Fari's latest revised draft plan at 4-story, 10-stacked townhouses for 20 units. This would remain an eyesore, especially with all island trees removed, like a wall compared to the maximum 2-story residential zone 1 in Alta Grange subdivision along Lakeview Drive. The 4 stories, 10-stacked townhouses for 20 units should be replaced with a maximum 2-story residential zone 1 for attractive townhouses, maximum 2 stories, like the rest of Lakeview Drive. The single entrance exit to Lakeview will be too busy. The 2 7-story apartment buildings west end of Lakeview are the highest number of stories for any building north of the Thames River in Woodstock. Why not 5 stories for less units that creates more manageable traffic and parking, especially without visitor parking area and the new Fari plan? That's with all the 254 units with possible 500 cars, in addition to service vehicles, taxis, and buses, it will be too congested for only one main entrance on Lakeview Drive. Since almost all southbound traffic exiting Highway 59 will use the exit on Lakeview Drive. The other exit and entrance at Highway 59 are only for Highway 59 northbound traffic. In summary, Sharon, I would like to thank you for considering our comments on the original Province of Ontario GSP Group June 23rd, 2021 proposal and request for a few changes on the new Fari's draft plan regarding, firstly, reducing traffic flow across our street at exit 401 Lakeview Drive for safe traffic around the island. Second, have this 4-story stacked townhouses replaced with 2-story homes or semis to blend in with Alder Grange on Lakeview Drive. Reduce the 2 7-story apartment buildings to 5 stories to provide lower traffic and manageable parking achieved from less apartments units. Thank you, Tony and Sharon Nilikis.
Thank you very much. Any questions from council? Seeing none, then I would ask you to fill out the forms there before you leave. And again, with all due respect, I'm going to ask again to not be repeating things over. We'd all greatly appreciate that. Okay.
Good evening. Good evening. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak at this very important meeting. My name is Paul Luverink, and my wife Kim and I have lived on Lakeview Drive for over 20 years. We wrote a letter to all councillors and the mayor back in December, and I was going to read portions of that letter now, but due to time, I will shorten up considerably. But basically, we are opposed to the revised development as submitted. We live at 436 Lakeview Drive, which is directly across from the proposed development. And while we acknowledge that some revisions were made, we remain dissatisfied with the revised application. The proposal to build a 4-story stacked townhome directly across the street from our existing single-family homes is unacceptable. It is not compatible, especially when I'm hearing tonight when they're going to clear cut 14 of the 15 trees on the island and have no visual barrier between the 4-story stacked homes on Lakeview Drive backing onto Lakeview Drive and the ranch homes on Lakeview Drive that are currently there. When we purchased our property, we were aware that the land across from us would be developed. We trust that members of Woodstock City Council, as stewards of the community's long-term well-being, will ensure that any applications are carefully considered and developed. We rely on Woodstock City Council commitment to uphold the integrity of our neighborhood through enforcing appropriate zoning regulations, bylaws, and guidelines that will balance growth while maintaining the character and livability of our neighborhood. Our expectation is that any intensification is done thoughtfully in a way that protects the quality of life for existing as well as the future residents of our neighborhood. Councillors, you have a very difficult job. I can't imagine the amount of time and effort you put forth in listening to people, reading documents, trying to make the right decisions. It must be incredibly difficult. Please listen to the people of this neighborhood. There are issues still with this plan. There are problems with it. I know certain groups want to push this through, and I'm sure you are feeling the pressure. Please do the right thing and consider this application very carefully. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you. Any questions, Mr. Luverick?
Luverick, yes.
Thank you. Sorry. Seeing none, thank you very much. Don't forget to fill it out. Yep. Welcome. State your name and address. And again, I will repeat, please keep it to new information only, please.
I'll do my best, Mr. Mayor.
Please do.
My name is Dave King, and along with my wife, Norma, we live at 593 Pineview Drive, which is off of Ridgewood, just in the surrounding neighborhood. We moved here some 15 years ago, and we did our due diligence before purchasing the property and satisfied ourselves that the subdivision plan had all the protection of the official plan and necessary bylaws to maintain Aldergrade's development as one of the most prestigious subdivisions in Woodstock. Just check our tax file. They're pretty hefty. I know mine's pushing 7,000, and I got one of the smaller houses. Anyway, we were fine with the existing subdivision plan that was brought forward, and with the higher ratio on hectares, we saw no concern with the first application. However, then came the over-densification proposal, 85 units versus 42 from Fari Holdings, which will change the fabric of our community, stressing the traffic, safety, and community. Narrow streets, lack of parking, green space will ultimately make the project unsaleable, maybe unlivable. This project totally motivated to increase profits as opposed to community building. I've heard from the mayor and staff that Fari needs more units to make the development profitable. It's not council's job to make Fari profitable. It's your job to follow the bylaws and protect the integrity of the community. These variance requests aren't minor. You can drive a truck through them. I implore council to do the right thing, turn down this application, and let the committee assist as a party to the defense at OTL. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. King. Any questions before he walks away of Mr. King? Seeing none, thank you. Yes, please. So again, just a friendly reminder, new information, please state your name and address for the record. Welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship and councillors. My name is Melanie McEachran. I live at 11 Cedarwood Street along with my husband and children. That location is one street over from one edge of the proposed development. We lived there on and off for 10 years. I now summarize my November 5th, 2024 letter sent to all of you, councillors and Your Worship, regarding Fari's then and still most recent revised application for redevelopment of 401 Lakeview. Fari's minor revisions are insufficient in my view as a close affected resident to address a number of problems previously raised to it and to you. I will summarize these now. Fari has communicated its effort to be responsive to its own assessment of resident concerns by, as I understand, A, aligning both slightly smaller footprint, 7-story R4 apartment buildings, each with 160 instead of the original 196 units along OR 59, presumably reducing the number of occupants by as few as 72. B, increasing the number of R3 4-story stacked townhomes from 48 to 68, with 10 aligned on the north side of Lakeview Drive, presumably increasing the number of occupants by about 60, assuming 3 residents per townhome, and 80, assuming 4. C, still failing to provide 30 required visitor parking spaces. D, still failing, I understand, to provide quite all of the required parkland, although I would like to hear if that's not the case. And E, failing to save all of the large trees along OR 59 or on the traffic calming island on Lakeview just off OR 59. Thus, hundreds of residents would still suddenly be added to an area with almost no services they would need, and only one infrequently running bus route, the Northwest route, servicing it. I'm very concerned that this is a recipe for abundant need for cars and parking. Inadequate park space and crowding in general, I am also very concerned, is a recipe for social ills. What is there for young people, for instance, to do in an area mostly occupied by seniors and young families and no services for young people and few for anyone else? Assuming Fari wasn't made to follow every rule, for instance, regarding providing the required number of visitor parking spaces, falling short in this case by 30, why not? Weren't all of those rules made for good reason? 30 absent visitor parking spaces would mean nearby residents like me would frequently have cars, not our own or those of our own visitors or close neighbors, parked in front of our houses. This would change our whole neighborhood for the worse, in my view. Does Fari imagine its proposed development residents won't have the usual number of visitors? Because if it acknowledges these new residents would have visitors, where else is Fari effectively sending them to park? Similarly, with inadequate park space and services, wouldn't current residents' neighborhood parks by definition be overused, not by themselves and their own visitors or visitors to the city, but by new residents who would have inadequate other places to play or to serve them? Additionally, the east end of the landscaped traffic calming island on Lakeview at its intersection with OR 59, part of it will still be removed, presumably lowering current residents' property values, of course, but also, and concerningly, wouldn't lowering the speed limit to 40 kilometers an hour there, while actually making it easier by decreasing the traffic calming island space to speed in this area, isn't that at best a naive way to cope with immensely greater traffic resulting from hundreds of new residents who need to use their cars because there's no services nearby they can walk to and very little bus service? Given the very high number of small children and seniors in the area, might this not be a recipe for danger to pedestrians? I understand that in FARI's most recent revised application, there continues to be no assessment of the safety impact on the community of various traffic routing decisions in FARI's studies and reports, despite the given area of OR 59, to my understanding, being a declared or posted community safety zone. Though if I'm mistaken in this, I would be grateful to see any such safety impact assessment of FARI's. I thank Council for considering my comments.
Thank you. Now, you did bring up a couple of questions, pointed questions there, and I'm going to ask if the planner may be able to speak. One of them I caught was the recreational space. Is the adequate? And I believe it was 5%. Mr. Gilbert, can you speak to that, please?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the park block that's provided in this plan is the 5% that's required. So there is no further parkland required for this development.
Okay. Thank you. That's what I thought. And was there something else there? Seeing none?
If I can ask a question, is this I'm not sure if I can, Your Worship.
Yeah, go ahead.
So is this area declared as a community safety zone?
No, I do not believe it is. I'm looking at the planner to confirm that. For engineering, no, it's not. At least at this point.
My concern is based on then there being very many children, small children living there, and as well as.
Thank you. Any questions of the delegation? From council? No. Okay. Thank you very much. Now, would anyone else like to speak out against this application? Seeing none? Okay. Thank you very much. We will move along. Just remind everybody here that we will be having further discussions on Thursday, and I would ask, due to spacing, we don't have as much room at City Council. You will be able to watch it live on YouTube if you'd rather stay home, watch the hockey game, and council. Thanks, everybody, for being here tonight. We'll give a couple seconds to let... Okay, everybody, we've still got 5 more items tonight. I'd ask if you'd like to talk and visit, please go outside so we can continue on our meeting, please. Thank you. 2C ZN 8-24-28, application for zone change. Mr. Miller, thank you.
See my drawings on it.
What's the application number?
2428, this one is.
2426, 2428. Yeah. Okay, perfect.
It's too late for my eyes to work.
All right, thanks everybody for being patient and sticking around, and we'll move along. Mr. Miller.
Good evening, committee staff and remaining members of the public. Application for zone change ZN 8-2428 in the name of Audrey Harris, care of Barbara Yonker and Helen Whitehead. The subject lands are described as Concession 13, Part Lot 4-5, formerly in East Zora, City of Woodstock, and municipally known as 231 Piddock Park Road. The subject lands are designated low-density residential in the Oxford County's official plan, are currently zoned future development, and the zoning request is for them to be zoned residential zone 3 or R3. The application for zone change proposes to rezone the subject lands for future development to residential zone 3 to facilitate the development of 20 townhouse units and 4 semi-detached units on the subject lands. The proposed development will contain 4 townhouse blocks of 5 units each and 2 semi-detached blocks for a total of 24 units. The subject lands currently contain a single attached dwelling and detached garage that's to be removed. At the time of writing this report, one letter of concern was received and has been included as an attachment to this report. The letter raises concerns over only single attached dwellings being permitted on adjacent lands zoned R119, lack of sidewalks in the area, and parking and traffic concerns particularly related to Piddock Park traffic. For council's information, the city plans to initiate roadworks in this area in 2026, including sidewalks. The proposal is consistent with the PPS policies respecting intensification, redevelopment, and efficient use of lands and municipal services within a settlement area. The redevelopment of the lands for 24 units, replacing the existing single attached dwelling, is an appropriate reuse and redevelopment of underutilized lands and will provide additional housing units and types for the current and future residents of the city of Woodstock. The proposal is consistent with the policies of the low-density residential designation. The proposal represents an appropriate reuse and development of underutilized sites, and the proposed density of 28 units per hectare is permitted in the low-density designation. The proposal also satisfied criteria for infill proposals as contained in the official plan. The use of lands for townhouses is a permitted use, and the subject lands front onto Piddock Park Road, which is a minor collector road and will be serviced by a single entrance. The subject lands are also immediately adjacent to Piddock Park and Piddock Conservation Area. This area of the city is characterized by a wide variety of lot sizes, lot areas, lot frontages, and development types. And the introduction of 24 dwelling units with a common entrance and on an oversized lot will be compatible with surrounding development. Although the area directly west of the subject lands is characterized by very large lots and single detached dwellings, there are many smaller single detached dwellings and townhouses immediately to the east. The proposal also provides all required parking and visitor parking. The development will be subject to site plan approval where servicing design, lot grading, stormwater management, buffering, and fencing will be required to be designed to the satisfaction of the city. Planning staff are of the opinion that the proposed zone change is consistent with the provincial planning statement and the official plan policies respecting infill development in low-density residential areas and should be given favorable consideration. As such, staff recommend approval of the application.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of Mr. Miller? Councillor Schadenberg.
Yeah, thanks. Through the planner, I guess my best question would be describe would the builder be required to, or developer be required to fence the entire property, both for security of the residents, but also for protection between that and the sliver trail that the city of Woodstock Parkland?
Through the chair, that's not something that is, it's not a requirement through zoning. It is something we look at through site plan to make sure that any concerns that neighbors have through privacy and things like that can be taken care of through fencing, but it's not something that's necessarily required.
Council have any other questions? Seeing none, thank you. This, I would invite the applicant to come forward. Please state your name and address in relation to the application, and we'll go from there. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Dave Redford, 751 Anzio Road in Woodstock. Just here to support the application.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of the application or of the applicant? Councillor Schadenberg.
Yeah, sure. Again, from the mayor through to our applicant and delegation. I guess the same question to you, Mr. Redford. Would there be a plan for security purposes just to be able to put a fence around the entire property? Is that part of the sort of overall plan for the condominium?
If that's what the city would require, we could definitely do that.
And will each unit be sold individually as if they're condominium units, or would they be rentals?
Eventually, there'll be rentals for now. All done by local builders as well.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Redford? Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks for your patience. Please, yep, thank you. At this point, I'd ask if anybody would like to speak in favor of this application to come forward. Seeing none, would anybody like to come forward and speak against this application? Seeing none, we'll move along. Next up, 2D, which is NN 8-24-26, application for zone change for Callaway Real Estate Investment Trust and Canadian Tire. Mr. Miller? Thank you.
Application for zone change ZN 8-24-26, Callaway Real Estate Investment Trust, Inc. and Canadian Tire Properties, Inc. The subject property is described as 41M82, lots 4, 7, and 9, part lots 5, 6, 8, and 10 in the city of Woodstock, and are municipally known as 465 and 499 Norwich Avenue. The subject lands are designated regional commercial node in the county's official plan, are currently zoned Special Regional Commercial Zone C61, and the applicants are just looking to amend that zone in this case. The application for zone change proposes to amend the current zoning provisions on the subject lands to permit an LCBO, an additional standalone building, and a reduced minimum parking standard within the commercial plaza on the subject lands. As the proposal will promote an efficient use of existing infrastructure, planning staff are satisfied that the proposed development is consistent with the PPS with respect to land uses within a designated settlement area. The regional commercial node designation permits a wide variety of commercial uses, but the C61 zone specifically prohibits a retail food store or supermarket, in this case standalone, so I know Walmart has a food market in it, but it's excluding standalone food markets. A brewer's retail outlet, and an LCBO outlet. With regard to the prohibition of an LCBO outlet, this provision was originally intended to maintain the LCBO within the city's central area. However, the LCBO has since relocated from the central area, and the increase in the city's growing population is able to support an LCBO outlet within this location. The requested reduction in parking from 1 space per 22 square meters of gross floor area of structures to 1 space per 22
per 24 square meters is a minor departure from the existing standard and is resultant from the proposed standalone building, which is shown as Building E on the applicant's sketch. No parking issues have been identified on site. The subject land is serviced by public transit, and staff are satisfied that the reduction in parking will not have a negative impact on the site or adjacent properties. An additional standalone building is proposed for the subject lands. The building is proposed to be located near the south end of the subject lands between Walmart and a 3-unit commercial structure. The building will impact some parking spaces but will not impact traffic flow through the site. The subject lands have reached the maximum gross floor area for structures on the site, and the proposed 6,000 square foot new building means that the maximum gross floor area on the subject lands will need to be increased from 35,302 square meters to 35,900 square meters. The established gross floor area was intended to ensure the continued functioning of the site and flow of traffic. Staff have no concerns that the increased maximum gross floor area will impact the subject lands or adjacent properties. Planning staff are satisfied that the proposal is consistent with the policies of the provincial planning statement and meet the general intent and purpose of the official plan respecting commercial uses within the regional commercial node designation and can be given favorable consideration. As such, staff recommend approval of the application.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Wismer Van Meer of Mr. Miller, of course.
Through your worship to Mr. Miller, do we know what the standalone building is going to have in it? First, I was confused. I thought it was the LCBO asking to go in there, but I can see that it's not. It's going into the old Reitman's location potentially, but this standalone, I wasn't sure if that's been clarified.
It's probably best for the applicant's agent who's here to answer that question. I believe it's something financial, but he might be able to confirm for you when he comes up.
Thank you. Any other questions of the planner from council? Seeing none, thank you very much. I believe the agent is here this evening. If you'd like to speak to the application. Again, please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Daniel Branzio.
Thank you.
So good evening, council, staff, and the public. I'm here today on behalf of Smart Centers, who is the owner of the lands for this application. And I'm also joined by our planner, Kristen Bearsdale from GSP Group, who's in the audience. And she can come up if needed to provide some additional information. I'd like to thank Justin for giving a comprehensive review of our application, our request here tonight. And it's great to see that staff are recommending approval of our request as indicated in their staff report. I can provide some additional background information about Smart Centers, our application, and then answer any questions you may have. So Smart Centers, as many of you know, are owners and operators of shopping centers throughout Canada. We have approximately 195 locations, and we always strive to provide value and convenience to our customers. In the city of Woodstock, we have been here for over 20 years, since we first opened our shopping center back in 2002. That's also when the Walmart opened here. We're proud to be part of this community, and we believe that we offer excellent service, and we're dedicated to this community, as is represented by our shopping center. But going forward, we'd like to take this opportunity to further improve our retail offerings by opening a second LCBO on the property. This is the second LCBO that will be in Woodstock, and a new 6,000 square foot commercial building. And to facilitate these proposed developments, we're just asking for some minor amendments to the zoning bylaw, which I'll go through now. The first of which is a minor increase to the total gross floor area permitted in the zone to accommodate the new 6,000 square foot building. This represents less than 2% of the overall size of the shopping center. And According to population estimates, the city of Woodstock has experienced robust population growth, growing by approximately 13.6% from 2016 to 2021, which is our census data, which is more than double the provincial average. It's estimated that the existing population of 46,000 will be more than 58,000 within the next 10 years. All of this is to say, all these new residents, existing residents and new residents, are going to need a place to shop. And we believe this minor 6,000 square foot increase in retail will be able to be supported by the population. The second request is a minor decrease to the parking ratio, which is to accommodate the building footprint. This is approximately 54 spaces, a reduction of 54 spaces. But it's important to note that even after development, we will still be offering over 1,500 spaces to shoppers. The building will be located in a portion of the property that is underutilized, with parking spaces that are usually unoccupied. In general, throughout the whole shopping center, there's many parking spaces that are unoccupied, indicating that there's a surplus of parking there. In addition, we're finding that shoppers today are choosing other forms of transportation as well, including public transit, which is reducing the reliance on individual automobiles and parking. And to add to that, for additional context, our shopping center, immediately adjacent to our shopping center, there's 2 public transit routes that are easily accessible to shoppers, Route 5 and Route 6, that can be used. Our last request is to add a second LCBO in the city of Woodstock. In today's market, alcohol is readily available in many locations, including grocery stores, convenience stores, and gas stations. So in our opinion, putting an additional location here is appropriate. This represents a great opportunity for us at this time to enhance our shopping center and provide much needed in-demand services for the community. Overall, the requested amendments are quite minor, and they will facilitate development that's going to be similar to what's already existing on the shopping center. So we foresee this being as a seamless integration and will maintain the existing character of our shopping center. Therefore, when all things are considered, we believe our request represents good planning and should be approved. So thank you for taking the time to listen to this presentation, and we would be happy to take any questions now.
Thank you. Any questions of Mr. Brenzia? Councillor Wismer Van Meer.
Through your worship to Mr. Brenzia, did you mention what was potentially going in that outbuilding in your presentation? Sorry, I was trying to read some of this smaller print on here with my really bad eyes, and I'm not sure if you if you mentioned it when I was reading that information.
Yeah, absolutely. Through the mayor, it's going to be a financial institution.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Any other questions of the applicant? Seeing none, thank you very much for being here tonight.
Thank you, Mayor.
At this point, I'd ask if anybody would like to come forward and speak in favor of this application. Seeing none, anybody here would like to speak against this application? Seeing none, moving along. Next up, 2E ZN 8-24-20, application for zone change. Mr. Miller.
Application for zone change ZN 8-24-20. name of 1099970 Canada Inc. This application was previously deferred on October 17, 2024, to allow the applicant more time to improve the current state of the property. The applicant has provided 2 letters prior to the February 20th council meeting. The first letter is from the landowner, and the second letter is from Radar Property Management, Inc., outlining improvements to the property. They've been included as attachments 6 and 7 in the report. The subject property is described as Part Lot 20, east side of Delader Street, Plan 10, as in 397795 in the city of Woodstock, and are municipally known as 18 and 20 Delader Street. The subject lands are designated central commercial in the city of Woodstock, or central area in the city of Woodstock Land Use Plan, and entrepreneurial district in the city of Woodstock Central Area Development Plan. The application for zone change proposes to rezone the subject lands from special residential zone R225 to special entrepreneurial district C311 to facilitate the addition of 4 dwelling units to an existing 3 dwelling unit converted dwelling. This change will result in a development that is consistent with the definition of a multiple attached dwelling and is permitted in the C3 zone. The applicant proposes an addition to the rear of the existing residential building to accommodate the 4 extra dwelling units and proposes to relocate the existing accessory structure on the property to accommodate additional required parking. The applicants intend to retain the accessory structure for storage space for the residents and for storage of maintenance equipment. As the proposal will promote an efficient use of land and infrastructure, a mix of range and housing options, planning staff are satisfied that the proposed development is consistent with the policies of the PPS with respect to housing needs within a designated settlement area by providing rental housing in Woodstock. With regard to the zone provision requesting reduced lot frontage, side yard, and parking area setbacks, these features currently exist on site with the existing structures, and with the exception of the parking area setback, have previously been recognized in the current R225 zone. The proposed addition or relocation of the accessory structure will not further reduce the zone provisions associated with the existing structure. Lot frontage provisions are intended to ensure that sufficient space is provided for a building envelope, access, and off-street parking. Side yard provisions are intended to ensure that adequate space is provided for access and normal maintenance of structures. The parking area setbacks are intended to ensure that adequate space is provided for parking and that vehicles do not trespass onto adjacent properties when parking. Given the long-term existence of the conditions of the development, staff do not anticipate a negative impact from the alternative zone provisions requested. Resulting from the proposed addition and increase in dwelling units, the applicants have also requested alternative zone provisions with respect to lot area per dwelling unit, landscaped open space, and amenity space. These provisions are intended to ensure that sufficient space is provided for amenities, outdoor space, and space for drainage. The applicants have requested a minimum lot area per dwelling unit from 150 square meters to 141 square meters, a minimum required landscaped open space from 35% to 32%, and to reduce the minimum required amenity space from 30 square meters per dwelling unit to 15 square meters. For the most part, these are minor departures from the existing zone standard and are not anticipated to have a negative impact on the proposed development. Further, the subject lands are approximately 17 meters from the city's central area, where these provisions are significantly reduced and where the city anticipates significantly more dense development. Planning staff are satisfied that the proposal is consistent with the policies of the provincial planning statement and meets the general intent and purpose of the official plan respecting permitted uses and residential intensification within the entrepreneurial district designation and can be given favorable consideration. As such, staff recommend approval of the application.
Thank you. Any questions of Mr. Miller? Councillor Schadenberg.
Yeah, from the chair through to Mr. Miller. The garage at the back of the property, I think the last time we saw that proposal for, the idea was to move it or remove it. Is it still supposed to be moved to a different location or a different location on that property?
Yes, through the chair, it's intended to be moved to a different location so that they can incorporate all of the required parking while retaining the garage on site. I believe in the sketch that's up on the screen, they kind of see a hatched area where it is just southeast of where it's shown in the drawing.
I remember asking before previously, again, the last time they were here, that the garage was awfully close or quite close to the sort of the loading dock area for Shoppers Drug Mart behind it, which also thought to me was a little bit of a kind of a predicament location for that garage to even be existing there. My next question is, how big does a lot have to be for low density commercial? This is more of a generic question. When you talk about 30 units per hectare or 12 units per acre, how large does a lot have to be before some of that math applies? Does it have to be at least an acre? I mean, obviously this is less than an acre.
So through the chair, there are minimum zone provisions for minimum lot areas. So it depends on what type of low density development you're going to do. I can't tell you what those are off the top of my head, but they're quite small. And that's why to appropriately design the site the way the city wants to, that's why we establish minimum lot area per dwelling unit, so that we make sure that there's still a minimum lot size provided.
Any other questions of the planner? Just wait. I'll come to you. This is for council right now. I do have a question for you. Going back to the garage that's being moved, thinking of ARUs, would it be possible to have additional residential units go into this garage in the future?
Not in this case. I believe the current ARU zoning bylaw only permits ARUs in single detached dwellings, semi-detached dwellings, in street fronting townhouses. So because this is a multiple attached dwelling, it wouldn't be eligible for an ARU. Theoretically, they could apply for them to be extra units, but they wouldn't be subject to the same discounts and things like development charges that ARUs typically get.
Okay. And just to be clear, there's no intentions of living area within the garage area at this point.
That's accurate. If that was proposed that way, they would then be deficient in parking, further deficient in things like dwelling unit per square meters, which might raise concerns through the review process again.
Okay. And I'm asking that for residents in the neighborhood that have asked me, so I just wanted to be clear. Thank you very much. Any other questions of the planner before I open it to the public? Okay, seeing none. First, I'd like to invite anybody to speak in favor of this application to come forward. Applicant, thank you. Or sorry, the applicant. Would the applicant like to come forward? I'm not sure if they're here. Ms. Geerling says, yeah. Thank you very much for that, Councillor. Seeing no applicant here tonight, then I'll open it up to the floor. I'm sorry. No one here to speak in favor of it, I assume? Anybody wishing to speak against this application, please come forward. And I would ask that you state your name and address for the record when you come to the podium, and afterwards, I'll ask you to fill out the form. Perfect, thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Susan Rampersad. I spoke at the last meeting, so good evening, Your Worship, councillors. So thank you for allowing me to speak. I had a few questions. I'm just, before I start speaking, have there been any changes proposed since our last meeting? Everything is the same. How many parking spaces are there?
Yeah, just reading it. It's up on the screen. Yeah, thank you.
So through you, I believe the minimum parking space requirement is 1.5 spaces per unit.
And there's 7 units?
So there's 7 units, and we would round it up. So what's that?
14, 15, 16,
7
17.
plus 3 plus 4, 11 spaces.
And where are those 11 spaces going to be in front of the garage? Like in that back area?
Yes.
Has this property, including the garage, been approved for commercial use? Because I think we heard at the last meeting that the garage was rented out to an auto body shop that was being used for commercial purposes.
So through the chair, it's not currently approved for commercial uses. The R225 zone permits basically what's there. So just the residential uses. The C3 zone in the designation is an entrepreneurial district, which does support some commercial uses, but that's not what's being applied for here.
Okay. Right. So I already raised my objections at the last meeting. I'm understanding that nothing has really changed from a planning perspective, so I'm just reasserting the same objections that we had before, namely density, parking on the street, disruptions to the neighborhood, traffic, and just the fact that on this small city block, we already have 2 high-rise apartment buildings with several units, and now the community, the residents are really opposed to this because it's just too many people in a small area. And again, me personally, I'm trying to flag an issue that the applicant is not here. He wasn't here at the last meeting. It really doesn't feel like he cares. And at that last meeting, I was really shocked to learn that the garage was being used for commercial purposes. That's shocking, and would explain why at 3 o'clock in the morning, every morning, I'm hearing the sound of drilling and sawing, why we have so much police involvement. We have violence and domestic abuse and, all kinds of things. I think the community is really in favor of low income, affordable housing, right? That's not the issue here. The issue is the owner and the landlord. We heard of cockroaches, no plumbing, no ability to flush. And I would like to raise that as can we call public health? Can we do something about the situation that already exists before we approve this deadbeat landlord to add more units and create more problems? That's it.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Any questions before you go away? Councillor Wismer Van Meer.
Through your worship, and sorry, I missed your last name, so.
Rampersad. My mom we live next door. My mom is 92 tomorrow, so
Oh, wow.
I'm really here speaking on her behalf.
Well, I hope she has a great birthday tomorrow. I think, and I'm not sure if you've had a chance to see the agenda, there were some photos provided for us from the property owner as well as the individual that's looking after the property now, doing the maintenance and stuff. I know some residents that live in this area that have still been sharing some photos with me to say, this is what's here today, this is what's going on. So as nice as it is to have these photos, it's easy for me to send you a photo of when my place looks good. I don't suspect they're going to always show us the photos of when things are not looking good.
Right.
So I do still have concerns, when neighbors are still sending me photos showing that it's maybe not being cared for the way that's being depicted. Is that something that your or your mother is witnessing, or other people in the neighborhood that you've spoken to?
So since that meeting, my mother's property has been, I guess, invaded is the correct word, twice, from someone coming over from that side of the property and stealing all of her furniture, specifically like the metal furniture, presumably to sell. She's since put up a fence along the wall that divides our backyard from their backyard, and people can climb over fences. So yeah, the front porch, I'm not inside. So at the last meeting, I was really shocked to learn of these horrible conditions inside. But outside, this building looks like it's falling apart. So I'm not understanding. I'm not in favor of adding more units to someone that doesn't care enough to be at these meetings and doesn't care enough to improve the living conditions of the people that are already there. So I would say there's been no change.
Any other questions for the delegate? Well, please wish your mom a very happy birthday.
Thank you. Thanks. I know it's been a long night, so thanks for allowing. I know we're just the
Thank you.
underdogs here.
Nope.
The gallery's empty, but we still count, right?
Yeah. Anyone else like to speak against the application? Somebody hiding underneath a bench somewhere? Nope. Good. All right, moving along. Where am I? 2F. Application for zone change, ZN 8-24-16, Cache Developments, Carn Road. Mr. Miller.
Applications for zone change ZN8 2416 in the name of Cache Developments Woodstock Inc. and ZN8 2418 in the name of Carn Road Land Development Corporation. The subject property is described as lots 14 and 30, Plan 1621 in the city of Woodstock, and is applicable to the lands within draft approved plan of subdivision SB 21-13-8. The subject lands are currently designated residential, environmental protection, and open space within the county's official plan and within the residential density plan, low, medium, and high residential density. Within the city of Woodstock zoning bylaw, the existing zoning is environmental protection 2, open space 1, open space 2, special residential zone R129, special residential zone R240, special residential zone 3, R355 and R356, and special residential zone 4, R420. The proposed zoning seeks to amend the R129 zone, amended special residential R240, special residential R335, R355, and R356, and special residential zone R420. The application for zone change proposes to replace a special provision in the R240 zone to clarify the intended setbacks between the dwellings to reduce the minimum exterior side yard in the R240 zone from 4.5 meters to 4 meters, to rezone the subject of portion lands from R129 to R240, and to reduce the site triangles and distances from intersection provisions to permit a minimum distance permitted between a driveway and intersection of 5 meters within a draft approved plan of subdivision. Last week, the applicant's agent provided me with an opinion letter requesting a different site triangle and intersection setbacks than were requested through this application. Unfortunately, due to the limited amount of time prior to this meeting, city engineering staff who planning would rely on to review this information confirmed that they would require more time to review the new submission. I indicated to the applicant's agent that we could defer the application at the applicant's request to review the new information. However, the agent requests that we move forward to this meeting. For council's consideration, the new submission requests a setback of 7.5 meters for a driveway from an intersection where lots that have a frontage of more than 12 meters require 9 meters in the city's zoning bylaw. The applicants have requested that 3 lots in the plan of subdivision, lots 1 to 3 shown on plate 4, be rezoned from R129 to R240. The effect of this portion of the proposed zoning is to permit lots with narrow frontages, reduce lot areas, and increased lot coverage, and decreased side yard and decreased interior side yard widths. Staff have no objection to the proposed zoning. The applicants have requested to reduce exterior side yard width in the R240 zone from 4.5 to 4 meters. The intent of the minimum interior side yard width is to ensure that adequate space is provided for regular maintenance of the right-of-way, to provide space for grading and drainage, and to ensure that buildings are adequately set back to maintain sight lines in a consistent streetscape. Building and engineering staff have not identified any safety concerns with the reduced setbacks, provided site triangle setbacks are maintained. Through the subdivision review process, engineering staff will further ensure that adequate grading and drainage can be provided to the subdivision based on the approved setbacks. The applicants have requested that the existing zone provision for interior side yard widths be clarified in the R240 zone. The intent of this change is to provide clarity on minimum interior side yard widths to facilitate easier interpretation of the zone provisions. The applicant's suggested clarification is consistent with staff's interpretation of the existing R240 zone provisions, and as such, staff have no concern with the proposed changes and have forwarded suggested new wording to the applicant's agent. Staff are satisfied that portions of the proposal relating to clarification of the interior side yard setbacks, reduced minimum interior side yard setbacks, and rezoning of 3 lots from R129 to R240 are in keeping with the intent and purpose of the official plan. The proposed residential uses are consistent with the policies relating to low-density residential uses. The applicants have also requested a reduction in setbacks from required corner lot site triangles and distances from intersections. In both cases, the required setback is 7.5 meters, and the applicants are requesting a reduction to 5 meters. Again, this is different than new information that came to us last week. Section 5.1.3 states that a site triangle, a triangular space formed by intersecting street line of a corner lot, shall be measured back 7.5 meters in all residential zones and 9 meters in all other zones. Within a site triangle of a corner lot, no obstruction higher than 2 feet above the grade, including any building, structure, sign, landscape planting, or parking of vehicles is permitted. Section 5.4.1.11 establishes driveway standards, and Section 5.4.1.11.6 specifically identifies distances from intersections and states that where a lot is greater than 12 meters, the minimum distance from a driveway intersection shall be 9 meters, and where a lot line abutting a street is 12 meters or less, the minimum setback shall be 7.5 meters. As it applies to this subdivision, due to the prevalent lot frontages, most driveways are required to be at least 7.5 meters from intersections. City and county staff consider established setbacks, including distances from intersections and corner lot site triangles, to be important safety standards to support road safety by prohibiting driveways or obstructions in close proximity to intersections. The requested reduction to 5 meters is shorter than one parking space, which has a minimum length of 5.5 meters, and is equivalent to less than one car length being provided before a driveway or obstruction at an intersection. In staff's opinion, a new plan of subdivision must be able to accommodate the minimum safety standards established in sections 5.1.3 and 5.4.1.1.6. The portion of the proposal relating to setbacks from site triangles and distances from intersections for driveways is not considered to be in keeping with the intended purpose of the official plan. The road section of the official plan establishes policies for public roads in the city of Woodstock. The roads policies direct that city council shall consider the potential effect of development on safety, efficiency, and volume and flow on adjacent streets. Through the application process, city staff have identified safety concerns related to the proposed reduction in site triangle distance from intersection setbacks and do not support this part of the proposal. Planning staff are satisfied that this portion of the application related to clarification on interior side yards, reduced minimum exterior side yard, and the rezoning of lots from R1 to R240 is consistent with the policies of the PPS and meets the general intended purpose of the official plan, respecting low-density residential uses, and can be given favorable consideration. Planning staff are not satisfied that the portion of the application related to relief of site triangles and distances from intersections for driveways meets the general intended purpose of the official plan respecting roads, and this portion of the application should not be given favorable consideration. To review the new site triangle intersection setbacks requested last week, staff had recommended to the applicants that they defer this application to allow staff more time to review the new information. However, as requested by the applicant's agent, staff are prepared to make a recommendation contained within the report without consideration of the newly requested intersection and site triangle setbacks. And staff's recommendation, if staff's recommendation is followed as written in the report that you have here, the applicants will need to make new applications consistent with the request made last week. Alternatively, staff recommend the recommendations that are included in the report.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of the planner? Councillor Schadenberg.
Yeah, from the mayor through Mr. Miller, I guess the first thing is try to use an example that you may be able to correlate to what they're asking for, and this at the top of page number 5, where they talk about 1.2 meters on one side of the lot line and 0.6 meters on the other side of the lot line. I know in the city of Woodstock on Anderson Street, there's some areas called zero lot allowance, which I think are even less than 0.6 meters on one side of the property. I think it's like 6 inches on one side of the property and 4 feet on the other side of the property line, as if the house is built on the property line, in essence. Can you explain Anderson Street and explain how this is different?
Through the chair, I'm not specifically familiar with that. I can probably look into it before Thursday's meeting and give you a better answer. I'll just write down Anderson Street when I get back to my chair. But I'm not aware of anywhere where the city has permitted zero lot lines. Sometimes when we're permitting the 0.6 meter setback, once you put eaves and gutters and things like that on, you're pretty close. But I'm not sure, and maybe Craig has a better idea while he's here.
Mr. Chairman, through to the question, we're talking about 0.62 foot side yards.
The question from the councilor was that Anderson Street, and is there a zero lot line setback from development there?
Yeah, that was the Chickadance subdivision. So I forget the exact provisions, but I believe one house was built on the property line, but there was an easement created on the adjacent lot, which allowed that homeowner to go onto the neighbor's property to access the side of the house. That's the only example that we have in Woodstock for that type of situation.
Does that satisfy
Yeah, so I
that?
guess my follow-up would be as long as the fire department is fine with these houses being this close together, then I likely would be fine with it as well, because we also have the Tom Black Boulevard and whatnot, where some of the houses I think are closer together than what is seemingly less than 8 feet.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just continue this. So your concern is the 2-foot side yard? So in the Frontenac Champlain subdivision, I'm just guessing, that's roughly 15 years old. So from the Chickadance subdivision, which we didn't like the 0 lot lines, so I believe it was Thomasfield Homes came into Woodstock, they introduced the 2-foot side yard in that subdivision. So the one house had to be a minimum 2 feet. The lot adjacent had to be a minimum 4 feet. So you had 6 feet between the houses.
This would appear to be the same then, so like I say, I'm fine with it.
Okay, any other questions of the planner? Seeing none, is the applicant here for this? And I'll certainly say thank you for sticking around and having a long evening. So if you don't mind naming, yep, thank you. You know the drill.
Okay, good evening. My name is Brandon Flewelling. I'm a planner with GSP Group. Thank you for your time this evening. I will keep this pretty quick. It's been a long, eventful night, but nice to be up here when the gallery is empty and not so worried about something I'm here for. So I think Mr. Miller did a good job of going over our request, and I just want to hit a few highlights and then talk about the one area where we did essentially change our request late in the process, as he noted. So as noted in the staff report, our requested amendments look to clarify the separation or the distance between dwellings, reduce the exterior side yard setback, small rezoning of 3 lots from R129 to R240, and then to reduce the reduction of a setback of a driveway to an intersection. And that's the one where we've sort of changed our request midstream, and I'd like to present that to council. So quickly, I think perhaps the clarification was provided about the separation between dwellings, but is really just to clarify the wording so that if it's not Mr. Miller or myself or the current developers looking at the application, that everyone was clear what setbacks apply. So 1.2 meters on one side, 0.6 on the other side, and always a minimum of 1.8 between dwellings. And it's basically the way the original bylaw was written, but it wasn't perfectly clear for interpretation, and we wanted to request that clarification. So staff is recommending support of this change, and that would suit the developer's needs. The next request was a minor change of a reduction in the exterior side yard setback. So from the 4.5 meters as required down to a 4-meter exterior side yard setback. Again, staff has recommended approval of this request, and that would suit the needs of the developer. It really just gives them a bit more design flexibility in this neighborhood. There are significant topographical changes throughout the neighborhood, and just citing the individual lots, having a little bit more wiggle room helps to make the grading and drainage and site design work. So that's where that request comes from. The next one, just quickly, the zone changed from the R129 to the R240. So on the original draft plan, these lots were going to be 12-meter frontage lots, so a little bigger lots. But through the detailed design and the engineering design, it was found that a bit more flexibility, allowing smaller frontages for these 3 lots, would assist with the overall grading design of the subdivision. Again, staff's recommending approval of this request, and that will help the developer and the engineers, appropriately design and the grading of the site. So I think we're all good on that one as well. So the next one is the request for the setback of driveways to intersections. Our original request, as noted by Mr. Miller, was for a reduction from the requirement of 9 meters down to 5. And this is only applicable to lots with frontages of 12 meters or greater. We've since looked at the detailed design in more detail and realized when we asked for the request of the 5-meter setback, the engineers and the designers had provided double width driveways on those corner lots. And it's not necessary. It's not required as part of their design. So we're really reducing our request from 5 meters, or increasing it, I suppose, up to a 7.5 meter setback for lots that are 12 meters or greater. So the driveway can be within, or has to be 7.5 meters or greater from the intersection. That same requirement is actually permitted with lots that have 12 meters frontage or less. So say you had an 11-meter lot, the zoning bylaw allows a 7.5 meter setback for the driveway from an intersection. It's only when it's greater than a 12-meter lot that the increased setback up to 9 meters is required. We can provide the 7.5, but we can't provide the 9. So the request, again, has increased from 5 up to 9. I just want to clarify quickly through the zoning bylaw and the actual detailed design what this looks like on the ground. So on the left side of the screen is the actual zoning bylaw, and the definition of street line is coincident with the definition of property line. And as you can see in the diagram here, the red dotted line would identify the street line or the property line when you're looking at the zoning bylaw, versus the drawing on the right-hand side is actual. You're not following my presentation. Not helpful.
Matt, can you adjust the, oh, yep, thank you.
My apologies. Yeah, I suppose I should check my blind spots and see what's actually on the screen. Kristen, you had one job. I will keep it quick once we have the graphic. Oh, can I?
See if that does it. Oh, there we go. Yeah, that's what it should.
Okay.
It should.
Okay. Let's try this again. Okay, this is what I'm speaking to. So the drawing on the left is from the zoning bylaw. And you can notice the red dashed line, I've just added that in to highlight. The zoning bylaw identifies the street line or the property line as the same point in measured scale. The drawing on the right is our actual detailed engineering design. And the important part here to highlight is that the property line, again, I've shown it in a red dashed line, is different from the physical street line or the location of the actual road base. So the actual street line I've shown at the edge of there's a blue line. And the importance is that there's a 3 meter boulevard. In this case, there's no sidewalk on this corner. So it's the smallest example. So therefore the one where the driveway would be the closest to the intersection. But there's a 3 meter boulevard that is actually beyond the property line before the physical street edge, versus the drawing on the left, which is from the bylaw, presumes them to be the same point in plan. So our request is for the driveway setback to be 7.5 meters from the actual property line or the ownership line. But in reality, there's an additional 3 meters beyond that. That is the actual street line. So the driveway setback, when you add up those two numbers, is over 10 meters from the actual street line. So again, in the zoning bylaw, the interpretation is that the road is right at the property line, and the site triangle is measured at that same corner. But in reality, there is a boulevard that's provided beyond the property line and the physical street edge. So That's an important point of clarification, and I think staff is aware of that, but I think it's important in reality to understand what this looks like in terms of navigating the street and providing a parking space there or having a safe entrance to the driveway. Quickly, as Mr. Miller noted, we did submit a letter from Paradigm Transportation who reviewed the proposed setback, and again, they reviewed the setback at 7.5 meters. 7.5 meters versus our original request, which was 5 meters. They found it's reasonable and acceptable based on the Traffic Association of Canada design guidelines as far as guidelines for setbacks from driveways and intersections. And they've also noted, and as I've highlighted in my presentation, the zoning bylaw already permits a 7.5 meter driveway setback for lots with 12 meter frontages or less. We're just asking for it for the lots that are greater than 12 meters. And really, in the context of the subdivision, it's the corner lots, it's the corner single detached lots that would be impacted by this. Further, I'd just highlight that other areas nearby, Kitchener, Waterloo, Ingersoll, and Tillsonburg all have a 7.5 meter or less requirement. So it's not something that's out of the ordinary, or certainly within the county, both Ingersoll and Tillsonburg do permit that 7.5 meter setback. So all of that being said, I think certainly appreciate staff's report and their 3 recommendations that recommend approval of our 3 requests. Then the 4th one where they had recommended refusal, again, they were looking at slightly different information than in front of council tonight, but I have provided some recommended wording that would suit our request based on the revised request. And it's really that according to that section of the bylaw, 54111.6, that a reduced setback from 9 meters to 7.5 meters would be permitted with lots with greater than 12 meter frontage. So I know council has the ability to take the staff recommendations to make changes or what the case might be, but I guess my request going forward would be that perhaps staff consider this request and maybe can come back on Thursday with additional information. That council perhaps consider our amended recommendation. And then the third option, I suppose, would be accept the 3 that staff are recommending approval for and defer this last item so that we could still get the momentum on the other zoning items and have those clarified. But if we could do it all on Thursday with the revised recommendation, that would be more efficient. But certainly if there's an ability to approve the first 3 and defer this last item versus refusing it, we would be open to that discussion as well. So I think that was a lot, but hopefully you followed along, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from council? I guess I do. Maybe because it's a late night and I'm trying to follow the bouncing ball here. And maybe I'm going to direct this to Mr. Miller, if I might. With this new information, would that, or does that change any type of recommendations from planning department?
Not for me, the planner. Just because we rely on getting that information for what is a safe setback from the city's engineering department. The city's engineering department indicated to us that they couldn't fit within their timelines a chance to review that letter and respond to it prior to this week's meeting. So I as the planner who's a layperson, can't tell you whether that's a good thing or not.
Then maybe I'll direct that to engineering then? Just again, to respect timelines, and is there any chance to get this all done on Thursday, or do we look at deferral if we do need more time? Your opinion, please.
Through to the chair. Yeah, I think we can have a recommendation to staff by Thursday, or by council to council, I mean by Thursday.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Any other questions? Oh, Councillor Sandberg.
Yeah, from the mayor through to Mr. Flewelling, I guess the question is related to triangles at intersections. Would a subdivision ever have any policies that sort of say you can't put a ornamental bush or something like that close to the corner either, because we've all seen people who like to grow hedges and all of a sudden they may not realize that that hedge is inside the traffic triangle.
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. The zoning bylaw certainly has those requirements. Talks about the height of anything within that visibility triangle. So that does get applied to all of the lots. I can't say that I've seen it as a specific call out item in a subdivision agreement, but I guess it's really relying on the zoning bylaw for that, keeping an eye on it. And then if it becomes an enforcement issue, the zoning bylaw is the tool to identify it. Sorry, if I could just perhaps add to that. After the detailed design, a reduction in the triangle, corner visibility triangle is no longer requested. It's just a setback to the driveway in the intersection now.
Can you repeat that?
Certainly.
Again, I'm feeling a little confused here.
Certainly. Our original request looked for a reduction in the corner visibility triangle as well as the setback of a driveway to an intersection. And now that we've done some more fine tuning and looked at it in more detail, the corner visibility triangle and the requirements of that, we can satisfy that on each of the lots. It's just the physical separation of the edge of the driveway to the edge of the street line that we're requesting a reduction in now.
Thank you for that.
No problem.
Any other questions? Seeing none? Thank you very much. With that, in case there's some people hiding, anybody like to speak in favor of this application? Going once. Anybody like to speak against this application? Seeing none. Well, that concludes tonight's meeting. A decision on these items will be made at the council meeting on Thursday. I'm going to look for a mover for adjournment. Councillor Leatherborough, second by Councillor Wismer Van Meer. All those in favor? We are now adjourned. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.